Shoo, 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 shoo. Look who it is, boys and girls. Rich Hribar. Lord Reeves, welcome.
What is going on, brother? It's that time of year. April comes quick every year. The season ends and we say, "Oh yeah, it's gonna be nice to, catch a little breath, recalibrate." And then April's here and bang.
April's here and bang, and then we're at the draft. We're going to be in Kansas City. I got a whole bunch of people from the underworld descending on Kansas City. We're going to have a good time. And then it's going to be, what is it then? It's going to be, we're going to be right into mini camp.
Yep.
Right? And then camp and fantasy season is going to be on. Oh, you just tweeted. Oh, let's retweet that. Yes.
Unfortunately, had to do the big Elon Twitter blue now that people can't see our tweets unless we have it. So unfortunately, had to sink into the darkness. He got me.
I haven't done it yet. I haven't quite gotten around to it.
I have noticed a difference too since the switch. I fought it for as long as I could. I think you have to do the 20th where they're actually going to take away the blue mark. Or they said that they've changed the date like a million times, but I have noticed a change in actual engagement with my tweets since I have made the change.
Oh, is that true?
Yeah, it has happened. So I don't know if it's a thing where, like, if you just want people to read your tweets, you got to pay for it now. It's in our profession, it sucks because we kind of have to get it. Hopefully, I can write it off at the end of the year. I'm gonna try to write it off. We're gonna try. We'll see.
It's $100.
Yeah, I mean, still.
Yeah, I mean,
Player
$100
Profiler
has it.
We shouldn't have to pay this $100.
Yeah, I know. Let me if I refresh my Twitter, I think you'll see the player profiler is supposed to have it. I'm seeing, does player profiler have it? I don't know if player profiler has it. Now I'm looking in player profiler. I don't see it. Where is it? I thought player profiler had Twitter Blue.
You got to get on your people.
Wait, has it been taken away?
I do. I see it.
Oh my God! Thank God. I thought we had it. I was like, oh my God. I think I had to pay for that with my own iTunes account and then somehow account for it through the business somehow. I don't even remember how I had to do that, but it was annoying because it's like, our stuff is based on like my own iTunes account. Right? It's like, so this stuff is kind of crazy. Like how you buy stuff. I was like, oh wait, I can't just put a credit card in. It's going to go, okay, whatever. Anyway, we definitely value the Twitter Blue for the business. I do not tweet a lot, unfortunately. I need to start tweeting more. It's like every day I wake up, I'm like, more TikToks, more tweets, and then nothing. And then I just can't quite do it. I did get on TikTok there for like a year.
Oh, really?
You
went on those streets, huh?
Yeah. We got up to like 10,000 followers for the brand account. We've been launching some additional channels on it. Like we're working it. But me personally, the one thing that I can commit to is coming on and doing these shows with the people for the people in the chat and the friends of the show like yourself. I carve out that time for social engagement. I want to be on YouTube. I want to have these podcasts because they are something that I just enjoy doing, and I think people get a lot out of it.
Yeah, I mean, I for a few years have gotten like less and less engaged on Twitter just because, one, it's hard, once you do get like a specific following. Like I can't tweet anything without a negative response now from some fan of some team. And it's just exhausting. So you got to keep the mental straight, especially when it's not like the heart of the football season. Like I'm not getting out here in April, maybe a little rookie engagement, a little sword and shielding, but like I'm definitely not getting out and talking about like hot player takes in April that like we don't need to see take fruition until June, right? Or until September. Like not arguing about these guys. I can't do it.
Now, you remember, you were the one that changed the whole premise of the show and how I bring in guests based on how I brought you in once upon a time. You remember that you had this idea because we did this cold. We did no music, and you were like, this really needs like the
Yeah, I need
Michael
that Bulls
Jordan
intro.
introduction from the United Center, right? I mean, I think that
Yeah.
would be good if we had
I mean,
that.
this is iconic.
Oh, it's
instrumental.
so iconic. Welcome to the Mind of Mansion program, the originator of the Konami Code and the Lord and Savior of fantasy football. From Sharp Football, here with me today it is Hribar.
I mean, that's all you need, man. I've got 3 hours of nothing but energy now to give you after that.
I'm seeing stars, but it felt so good.
No,
Literally
you got
stars.
it down. Yeah,
We didn't even go over it. Well, usually I
need to.
workshop it before. I was like, how am I going to bring you in? I was just feeling it. I hit the Bulls intro, and I was feeling it, bro.
Yeah, it's great, man. I remember the first time we did do that, and it was we went off without a hitch, man. And now I'm glad it's become a staple here, and I'm glad I could be a part of it. And I want to say this is, I don't know, man, my 7th or 8th time on the show. We've been doing it this time of year, I think, for 3 or 4 years. You think more or less?
Wait, what? You think
You think
you've only
more?
been on the show 7 times?
Well, I don't know, because I only come on twice a year now. So it's like, well, how many years have you been
We've
hosting
been
on here
doing
now?
this for, dude. You
I guess
first of
you're
all,
right.
you had 3 times sometimes, but I think you've been on 10 times.
Interesting. Do you think?
Think about it. 2023, 2022, 2021, 2020, 2019, 2018. You probably started coming on in 2017.
All right, so yeah, we're up in double digits then.
Yeah, I think so.
Maybe I'm in contention for most frequent guest that's not employee.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's either you or JJ. It's got to be.
And he was just on, right?
He's going to be on.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, you guys have a similar schedule, right?
Yeah,
Similar schedule. You guys,
Life cycle.
Matthew Friedman's been a long-time guest. So, yeah, we've had a few guys that...
The Friedman shows are excellent. You guys are quite the sitcom couple.
He wants to do more shows, and I'm like, yes, please. I'm always down for more shows. The thing I've got to do is I've always got to sit down, and it's always worth it, but it's something that needs to be thought about and researched, and that's the show sheet. Because when I have a good guest coming on, I know that it's in everyone's best interest for me to put a little bit of extra thought into the show sheet. So I hope you felt that. I hope you saw that there were good questions about some players that I know that you and I have talked about in the past, and I want to check in on those players as we go through this for sure. That's going to be a big deal. And we also have to talk about like players that are in the news, and I just want to get your take on Odell to Baltimore, but more so because we both love Rashad Bateman. That's a known thing. Bateman's your guy. He's my guy. And we've appreciated him quite a bit. I think he has some Justin Jefferson to his game. I think he has some Keenan Allen to his game. This signing of Odell Beckham, not just the signing, but the money, $15 million plus incentives. It's interesting. It tells me Lamar's probably back in Baltimore, but I want to get your take on it.
Yeah, there's a lot of micro layers to this, and obviously the Ravens had to do something, just anything. At this point last year, when we were heading into the draft, we thought for sure they would be adding wide receivers because Hollywood is either going to get that 50-year option picked up, then they end up trading him. They come out of the draft with really nothing. And you looked at this depth chart and you're like, holy shit, is this one of the teams that just has to sign Julio Jones and hope? It turns out they didn't, and they rolled into the season with really Bateman and a bunch of vagabonds. Bateman gets hurt. They turn to Demarcus Robinson as their wide receiver one throughout the course of the season. There was like a 9 or 10 week gap where no Ravens wide receiver caught a touchdown pass in the middle of the season. It was pretty impressive. And that happens when Demarcus Robinson is your wide receiver. And I think he's still a free agent. I don't think he's signed anywhere else, which is funny. So the Ravens they're still not done, I don't think. I mean, you can't, right? Because Odell's essentially a 1-year deal. He's 31 years old this year. He didn't play football last year. He hasn't averaged more than 45 receiving yards per game in a season since 2019. like they can't be done. There's just no way. And you have to factor in Bateman. Like he's missed time his first 2 years in the NFL. You can really be right back in the bag you were last year very quickly with this setup. So I don't even think that they're done adding wide receivers. The rub is they have been terrible at drafting wide receivers outside of the first round because, you know, Bateman's been like decent in his sample that he's been on the field, and Hollywood was solid. But then all these other guys they've drafted, like outside of day one, have just been nightmare fuel.
Miles Boykin, Devin Duvernay.
Yeah, I mean, you had Tylan Wallace, all these guys, man. It's just that they've just fallen to the wayside. You know, James Prochet, all these dudes. But
late round picks, though. I mean, they're really not putting any capital behind them, with the exception of Duvernay in the 3rd round.
That's why they got to
this
keep
year
going
they're gonna go 2nd round wide receiver. I've heard a lot of rumblings that they're very much in the market for a rookie wide receiver. So I'm thinking 2nd round. A bunch of these smaller wide receivers, which I think would be a good fit for Bateman has plenty of size. Even Odell has size compared to the wide receivers that are coming out now. Odell's gigantic. Right? He's a huge dude. But so they're gonna absolutely be in the market for whatever wide receiver is top of their board, middle of the 2nd round. I think that's where you could expect them to push the button.
Yeah, so Bateman, while I love him, he is the type of dynasty asset right now where gamers typically are just caught in that limbo, and either you don't want to call it like they're making a mistake, but this is where the like inflection point is of his career and his dynasty value. You know, a player we believe is good, but has not fully shown that he's a good fantasy asset. And the crux of, you know, his dynasty cost right now is built on, you know, age, perceived ability, and largely hope, man. There's some hope helium here. And, you know, a lot of people look at dynasty assets and they say, well, the most fragile thing you can have is either draft picks or veteran players. It's not. It's these types of players. It's young players that we believe are good that really haven't shown us a large sample of being good. Many of them don't end up being good. And that's kind of the beauty and the gift and the curse of dynasty. But like, think like Gabe Davis last season, Cortland Sutton's entire career, maybe Trey Lance, like the past few years. Like Bateman's very much in that kind of bucket of guys where if he doesn't hit this year, it's going to really tumble for him in terms of dynasty value and what his market value is. And then, you know, you look at some guys like this year again.
Oh, hold on. The Ravens actually don't have a 2nd round pick. So that is fake news. The Ravens do not have a 2nd round pick. That 2nd round pick was traded to Chicago as part of the Roquan Smith deal. I am on the player profiler NFL draft order section, and there's notes on there showing that the Baltimore Ravens, which had the 53rd or 54th pick, however you want to count the Miami pick, either way, it's no longer theirs. So, correction, they will likely be in the market for a wide receiver in round 3. And I am now checking to make sure, yes, they do have the 125th pick in the 3rd round, which if they really want a wide receiver, which I don't believe they're going to go 1st round wide receiver, given they just gave Odell Beckham Jr. $15+ million, that would be the 23rd pick overall. That's probably where a Zay Flowers ends up going. Zay Flowers to Baltimore would be pretty good.
Yeah, for 1 year. I mean, the nuance Bateman take is a lot like tougher when we get into like from the step away from like the top down view of what we just discussed. He's going to be in his 3rd season. He's still going to be competing with targets. For one, we know at least Mark Andrews. We know Mark Andrews is definitely going to probably lead the team in targets. Maybe Odell, maybe another addition in this offense. And we also inherently know that this offense just isn't going to have a lot of top-down passing value if Lamar Jackson is back as the quarterback. That's just the way it is. Even with Todd Monken coming over, I mean, what is the target ceiling here as a team? Like, it's probably going to be bottom 3rd, right? So, yeah, I mean, we're going to probably be left with needing Rashad Bateman to be a player that's built on efficiency over volume in his 3rd NFL season. It's fragile, man. We're on fragile grounds for sure.
I still believe.
I believe in the player
I'm still
for sure.
betting on him. He's a great player. You know, eventually you get redeemed with a DJ Moore, trapped in a bad situation, believe in the player, believe in the talent profile, and they will come out on the other end more often than not.
There's a lot of
Well,
these guys this year, though. I mean, Rashad White is in this bucket this year. Like,
yes,
is he good? Do we know? I
yes,
mean,
yes.
Javonte Williams, big inflection point year for Javonte
Well,
Williams.
that's
Uh,
different though. Javonte
yeah, a little bit.
Williams has, you know, beyond just an ACL tear.
And
So
look where he's
there's
still regarded,
collateral
though.
damage inside that knee with Javonte Williams, which is very scary. So that is a little bit different. With Bateman, he's kind of a cross between the two. Rashad White's actually the cleanest because
Yeah.
there's some organizational commitment behind him. He had an impressive college profile, checks all the boxes as a true workhorse that's involved in the passing game. So you love to see that. It's hard to imagine Tampa, and we'll talk about this later, what we think Tampa should be doing, investing, day 1 or 2 capital into a running back. That would be weird, and I doubt it happens. So I think he's more stable than Bateman because Bateman has the Liz Frank procedure he's coming back from. So it's not like he's participating in the offseason program. He's not. He's not going to even be ready for mini camp. Who knows when he's actually going to report and be able to practice? Will he miss all of preseason? Who knows? Who knows? He's got so many good comps, though. It's a rare thing that a player has this many good comps where I see Jefferson, I see Diggs, I see Keenan Allen. He is good. And whenever he's on the field, he has been efficient, and he's only showed like that dog mentality off the field. Everything that you read about him, this guy.
Well, that's the other thing too.
Junkie.
Is there a little schism with him? Obviously, he's taken a public swipe at the GM already this offseason.
He is an intense dude, and I respect the hell out of him. I believe that he inevitably falls in Dynasty because now, however you want to calculate a Dynasty ranking, or in our case, our lifetime values, it's primarily based on this coming season, right? And then those seasons like 3 and then 2 and then the first season out, okay, that's the most important. But as you go out in your projections, those have far less relevance than the upcoming season, even in a rebuild mode. So we're going to have a rebuild mode versus a win now mode for our dynasty rankings and our lifetime values. And even in that mode, this coming season is most relevant and the greatest driver of value because it also is tied to trade value. So even if you think a guy's going to miss the first 6 weeks because of an injury recovery, you can't cut his value in half. He has trade value, especially all these people that are rebuilding. Javonte Williams has value. So it's a tricky thing to kind of home in on that valuation, and we've done a great Jario and Theo and the team have done an incredible job of creating the machine that generates these lifetime values, but also depending on the mode that you're in, and you see a shift that really makes a lot of sense for what a rebuild team would value Javonte Williams at versus a win now team where they would value Javonte Williams. Either way, this upcoming season is by far and away the most important, is the value driver, is the trade value driver, and Rashad Bateman comes down at least 10% of his value, given that he's not going to be the alpha this year in that passing game. It's going to be Odell. They're paying him to be an alpha, and he's coming off this Liz Frank procedure, and that's without even talking about Mark Andrews and the receiver they ultimately draft not in the second round unless they trade back or they trade up into the second round, which is always a possibility, or they get Zay Flowers in the first round.
Yeah, there's a lot of fragility here with Bateman. Definitely believe in the player. I think it's a great time to probably still sell on the upside angle because of people like us that do believe in him as talent. I do think that probably obviously it's nuanced that what your team structure is and where you're at. It could be a great time to buy for some people, depending how that gamer feels that just took him for the hell of he was next guy on the board, right? And they're like, I didn't really want this guy in the first place. He's been good for 2 years.
He's a great guy to pick if you're in a productive struggle and you're rebuilding. You want Bateman. You want a guy like Javonte Williams. If you have determined, circled on the calendar, that the first year you're going to be competitive is 2024, then you should be going out and actively trying to acquire Bateman, trying to acquire Javonte Williams. but be realistic, right? Be a realist,
Right.
hyper realist with these people, that a lot of the people in your league are going to be trying to win this year, and they're not going to be really in the market for Javonte. They're not going to be in the market for Bateman, and their value is going to be depressed because of that. The demand side of the equation for Javonte and for Rashad Bateman just isn't there, and so we have to be realists about it. And if I'm in a league with someone like you and me who really appreciates Rashad Bateman, I'm going to be open for business. I agree. It sucks, man. I hate
It does. It's not great. I mean, it's the Ravens, the top-down situation, inherently with this quarterbacks. I mean, listen, we're going to probably live this life with Anthony Richardson, too, when we get to, if we're going to talk about him on the show and what happens over the course of his career. But, yeah, it's tough to really try to want to glom on to these wide receivers attached to this archetype of quarterback in these offenses from a fantasy stance. Real football value, tactical value, Bateman could be really good, like he was at the start of last year, and just be really volatile. But, yeah, I mean, it's the gift and the curse of the Konami code, the pure Konami code, that is.
Because Lamar Jackson pulls so many pass attempts out of this offense, and historically they want to run their running backs too, right? So they are a run-oriented offense. Even if they're adding Odell Beckham, that's not necessarily proof that they're changing. They're becoming super wide open. I don't think that's true. The thing that could save Bateman is the fact that the AFC North is looking like a shootout division, right? That's going to help Andrews for sure. That boosts him up. It's going to be good for Beckham. It's going to be great for Lamar Jackson. I mean, think about the teams that are in this division. This is an exciting division for fantasy. You agree?
It's kind of tough. You can squint and see it. There's definitely talent here on the offensive side, but we've got what? Three, four cold weather teams, right? Like, dude, the Browns, like the last few years, have played like 2 to 3 games every season in like fucking hurricanes. Like they've had like 2 or 3 games just get nuked by weather in like each of the past 3 years. That happened again last year in 2 games. So you've got, Cincinnati's got a great offense, but like they also are a team with Zach Taylor, who's like, Zach Taylor's kind of a donkey at times. And like he slows the offense down and kind of gets in their own way, and they don't score as many points as they should. And they play in these slugfest. The Ravens are still going to have a good defense. The Steelers are like just an alligator blood team, right? Like they're, again, like the blueprint for the Steelers. Like, we're going to try to win this game 20-16, like every week.
But the personnel on defense is below the 50th percentile. Like they have a below average defense across the board, and Pickett and Pickens are heading into their second year. So it's a young, dynamic offense. And you go
with Matt Canada. You're calling this Matt Canada offense dynamic.
Well, it's young with some dynamic pieces.
That's true.
I mean, think about Freiermuth. I mean, Najee Harris actually has an all-purpose skill set, so it's interesting. It's an interesting offense, and it's a situation where the offense is going to be better than the defense. You could probably say that about the Browns, given all the weapons that they've surrounded Watson with. You could say that about the Bengals. So if I go down the board and I'm like, well, most of these offenses, if not all of them, are better than their defenses, and we're talking about the Burrow offense and the Lamar offense and the Deshaun Watson offense, and they're bringing in, top flight wide receivers to add to this division every other week. I'm seeing a new receiver added to this division. That's exciting, from Elijah Moore to Odell Beckham, and then we're going to have the draft. I think that you could be glass half full on the AFC North.
Yeah, I appreciate the top-down optimism, especially because we've had so much evidence that these teams just don't really want to throw the football. We'll see if Todd Monken can open that up. The Browns are slowly getting there. We can save the Steelers if you want for a minute, just because you're putting a lot of faith in Kenny Pickett. Like, at least with Deshaun Watson, like there's an evidence of like Deshaun Watson playing good football in the NFL. And that might encourage a coach to put the ball in their best players' hands more. Sure. Kenny Pickett, questionable to this point. He was also a guy that like I just didn't love coming out, older prospect. Every time I watched Kenny Pickett at Pitt, I just kept saying, damn, Jordan Addison's good. It's like all I kept saying. I was like, well, this dude's really good, this wide receiver. It was like when Manziel was coming out and people were like, look at Manziel run behind the line of scrimmage and do all this shit. He's rolling cocaine dollars. I'm like, I just watched him huck a ball up to a 6'3" Mike Evans, and Mike Evans jumped over 3 motherfuckers. Like, that's the guy you want. You want that receiver. And that was with Kenny Pickett at Pitt. I was like, you want that receiver. Like, this dude is elevating this quarterback. I mean, Pickett was awful as a rookie. Like, there was nothing tangible like he provided last year. I mean, 23rd in completion rate, 32nd in success rate. No one had a lower touchdown rate than him, so at least you can only go up. On throws 10 yards or further downfield, Kenny Pickett completed 38% of his passes. Only Carson Wentz and Zach Wilson completed a lower rate of their passes on those dropbacks. I mean, we're putting a lot of faith in a guy, one, I didn't believe was a good prospect and did not do anything as a rookie to show me that, like, a team should just let him drop back 600 times. Very tough, man. Very tough there. Yeah, but, listen, the Steelers will somehow win 7 to 9 games. That's what they do every damn year. Whether they win them 13-10 or by hook, by crook, man.
They don't have a choice, though. Their defense is not good.
I mean, listen, Tomlin somehow, it's like Vrabel, dude. Like, a lot of people think the Titans are just going to cave. Like, these, man, Tomlin won 8 fucking games with Duck Hodges and Mason Rudolph. Like,
do you need to be that good at quarterback if you have Pickens and Deontay Johnson and Freiermuth?
Yeah, because are any of those guys good? I think Freiermuth's solid, but like, if you could merge Deontay Johnson and George Pickens into one receiver, he'd be a perfect wide receiver.
You'd be great.
He'd be amazing.
Get 2 of them, Rich. We get 2 guys. Isn't that better?
Well, as one guy though, but as 2 guys,
I know.
As 2 guys, they have an issue.
One guy has all these great traits, but he's got so many just drawbacks. Another guy, he's great downfield, but just doesn't command targets. Like, if you could make, because Pickens is good at all the hard things at wide receiver. All the hard things at wide receiver, like, Pickens is good at. Like, he's going to make the ridiculous catch. He's going to, win the 50-50 ball. He's going to be your vertical target. But, like, is he getting open enough on shallow routes? Can he create separation? All those things are questioned. You have the opposite in Deontay Johnson. He creates a ton of separation and gets open on shallow routes, but doesn't create any splash plays. I mean, since he entered the NFL, 10.7 yards per catch, lowest of any wide receiver with 300 or more catches over that span. He's 81st in yards per catch, over that span of guys that have 100 or more catches. He set an NFL record for most targets out of touchdown last year. So again, only one way to go. He's going to score a touchdown this year. But again, he's not like a true alpha. But like, we could merge these guys. If you could just give what Deontay Johnson lacks, or just like I said, just Voltron these dudes up. You got the perfect wide receiver, man. Would that be cool?
The one thing I will say about Pickens is the offense didn't help him either last year. So Pickens ran 221 go routes last year, 9 routes. It was the most in the NFL, by far. The next closest rookie wide receiver was Garrett Wilson. He ran 135. So he ran almost 100 more 9 routes than Garrett Wilson. That was the Matt Cannon offense, man. George Pickens, run deep. And I just laid out to you the stats of Kenny Pickett throwing the football downfield. That marriage is just not there. There's room for growth. Both guys are only in their second year.
We're going to keep rookies, though.
We're going to say they're rookie. I mean, so we're going to give them the benefit of the doubt. We're not closing the door, but I'm not excited about the Steelers at any level. And there's like Najee Harris was outplayed by Jalen Warren, even when the steel plate came out of his cleats midway through the season. He was a better player the back half of the year, and the schedule lightened up. But Najee Harris, from an efficiency stance, just still, like, he's a guy, man. It sucks because I think he's good. He's baseline level at a lot of things and not great at, like, really anything. And that's kind of the trouble. Like, there's just no explosive plays from him. And that you combine that with no explosive plays from your wide receiver 1 or no explosive plays from your quarterback. Where's the real juice here? Where's the sizzle, man?
What's the historical comp for Pickett and the Steelers? Was it the E.J. Manuel Bills? Is that where we had one quarterback go in the first round and it was in the mid-teens? Yeah. Right. So if you have a pitiful quarterback class. Usually one of them will end up going somewhere in the first round because the team is so desperate for a quarterback, they'll talk themselves into it. And no surprise, the team that talked themselves into the one guy that went in the first round happened to be the guy down the street. Oh, look at that. The local boy. He's the one. No shit. Really? Okay, interesting. So I think that Pickens is a better chance of breaking out than Pickett for that reason. I think Pickens has
Well, yeah, I mean, the odds
a
that
ton
Kenny
of
Pickett,
upside. If he does all the things that are hard well, then you would think that it would be much easier for him to clean up the little things as opposed to Deontay Johnson. We know that he can't become anything other than what he is. He's doing what he's doing really well, which is getting separation on shallow routes. That's his specialty. That's what he's good at. He's going to keep commanding targets.
he's good at earning targets.
What is the historical comp for him? Have we seen a wide receiver like Deontay Johnson be a huge target commander and not deliver much else beyond that through his 20s? Or did these guys tend to have their glass slipper broken in their mid-20s? So the question is Deontay Johnson like a dynasty trap if you're chasing targets? Or do we have historical precedent where there were guys like Deontay Johnson and they just kind of churned targets for 5 to 10 years, and you just need to be buying that, and all these other peripheral metrics you can just stuff into a hat?
Yeah, I think that both guys are pretty clear kind of sells. I don't think either guy's like the full answer. It depends on cost, obviously, and what you can get him at, but especially paired with Pickett. I mean, it's really hard to like say like there's a bunch of juice here. The other thing with Pickett too, where it's easy to kind of say if you want to give a hall pass is, and we'll maybe talk about this class because this class will be more impacted than last year because we only had Pickett in the first round. Desmond Ridder only got a few starts under his belt. Is that historically, you don't want players in fantasy football. This is more of a redraft take. Playing with rookie quarterbacks, their production dies, it falls down. You're not going to get. I was completely out of Deontay Johnson for that reason last year. I said, "Oh, he's going to be playing majority of his games as a rookie quarterback. I don't care how many targets he gets; it doesn't matter. He's off my board." And we're going to have probably Stroud and Bryce Young go at the top of the draft. We might see two other quarterbacks go in the top 10. Although I think both of those guys could fall lower than the market believes right now. But if we have 4 first-round quarterbacks, like you have to count on 4 guys playing next year at the position, and that's like 4 receiving cores that like you're going to probably not want to really attach yourself to and redraft from a redraft stance. There's a lot of fluidity and growth that can happen along the way, but historically, guys attached to rookie quarterbacks, especially at the wide receiver position, are not fantasy viable.
Think about what Goff did in his rookie year. Think about like number 1 overall picks and what they did in their rookie year. Most of them were awful. Most. So that's the hope for Pickett, right? Is that most of them are awful. And
yeah, you just got to pray.
Right? You've got it's certainly possible. If this offense took a step forward because you knew it was dragged down by multiple rookies in key positions playing huge snaps last year, you wouldn't be that surprised, but you would be somewhat surprised.
Yeah, I'm not closing the door. I mean, I was on here. I told you in a super flex league, like Kenny Pickett was, I do a lot of pre-draft leagues where we draft before the NFL draft. And I took Pickett at 15th overall. I just thought it was positional value. And I was going to take him. I'm basically hoping for like a Daniel Jones trajectory or something like that, right? Like that's what I'm hoping for. And hopefully I can just squeeze him or use him as just an asset of like, oh, you need a quarterback? Here you go. Like, and try to package up with him. So I do have a league with Kenny Pickett, and I do hope that he's a lot better than he was as a rookie.
He has some mobility.
Yeah, for himself, he just like it's gonna be hard for him to ever crack like the QB1 tier, right? Like just too much has to go right for him from a fantasy stance. Real football, you can see a path to where like he can at least be functional and baseline. Fantasy football, like him ever just not being a QB2 is probably never not going to happen. Maybe you run into one season where he hits.
He's got the mobility, and if he
is he ever going to run that much though? Like he doesn't have the super mobility. So he's going to always be pressed with the mobility he has to throw 30 plus touchdowns for fantasy football. He's going to have to. I think there'll probably be fewer seasons where he throws 35 touchdowns than ones we do.
Mm. Yeah, it's not great. 55 carries
that's the
last year.
conversation. That's the conversation with this class too, right? Like Stroud and Young both look very good, but do they have like the necessary ramp, right? Like, because you look at the QB ones now, because the fantasy has changed since the original. I wrote the original comic code 10 years ago. Oh God, that's so long ago. And it was about Terrell Pryor and Tim Tebow, these guys that couldn't pass, and just how the rushing component was undervalued. Move a decade later now. And we have a couple of these guys that still get through. Like Justin Field was like a pure Konami code guy last year. But now the guys that are mobile are competing with front end passing numbers. And that's when like these guys are just breaking fantasy football, man. The Josh Allens, the Jalen Hurts last year, when you get the rushing with the passing, like, because, you know, when those guys had the original Kami code came out, you had Drew Brees and Peyton Manning and, Tom Brady, like just the pocket passer. The guys were there getting all the passing stats, not any rushing stats. Now we got guys doing both things. And when they do both things, it's almost impossible to keep up with what those guys are doing. It's why DFS has changed the past 3 years. It's why redraft fantasy football has changed. Dynasty football is still behind the curve. Like, you do a dynasty startup right now, Deebo Samuel goes ahead of Jalen Hurts. What? Like, what? That's absolutely insane. That's absolutely bonkers. Like, Jalen Hurts is like competing to be like an absolute QB1 and front end scoring of the position for maybe the next like 7 to 8 years, and getting you 30 points a game, like helping you win weeks. But yeah, those are the guys that in like fantasy football, they've kind of changed the dynamic. And is Kenny Pickett one of those guys? It's hard for me to really believe that.
In a single quarterback league, on our dynasty rankings, looking at lifetime value, Jalen Hurts is a top 20 asset in single quarterback.
My dynasty rankings have all the top QBs way above market. Like, you want these guys in fantasy football. Like, especially the receivers, because obviously you do a startup. Everyone wants to get receivers in startup. It's tried and true. We know what we want to do. Rookies and rookie running backs and rookie drafts, wide receiver heavy in startups. But when you start to hit that firewall of QBs, because there's a firewall at QB now. You look at the past 3 years of fantasy football, QB1s drafted in ADP account for 67% of all top 3 scoring weeks on the season. That's a 2/3. That's 2/3. Like, that's house money, man. Like, you have to, there's an absolute firewall at quarterback now. Now, you can still get in on some later round guys. Like Fields was a value last year. Maybe you luck into some Geno Smith, right? But like finding those guys is a lot harder to do when all we had to do was arbitrage the passing numbers that like the Breeze and Mannings were having, right? You can arbitrage passing numbers. You can get some passing stats, especially when you can stream guys on a weekly level. You can't do it when those guys are now running and throwing. Like, those guys are hard to arbitrage, man. It's hard to arbitrage those guys.
Whew. I'm looking at Kenny Pickett here. So let's just look at his
There's
carries.
a lot of time on Kenny Pickett, man.
4.2 carries per game. Okay. So that's 17th in the league. So carries per game, he's not running enough. Right? He was outside the top 12 in total rushing yards. He didn't play the full season. He was better than average throwing the ball downfield and under pressure in terms of completion percentage and his catchable pass rate. So he was throwing catchable balls downfield at the very least, but his danger plays in, again, not a full season. Okay, 13 games. He was number 2 with 40 danger plays and 40 interceptable passes and only 12 money throws. So you have a 12 to 40 money throw to danger play ratio. That's absurd, right? So he might have been putting up the ball in a catchable place, but there was a defender draped all over him. The decision making was not there. That was actually the hallmark trait, and only 7 touchdowns. But that's the thing. Like, sometimes, if not more often than not, the low touchdown rate is a buying opportunity. Like you take a guy like Deontay
He's
Johnson.
Going to throw. The touchdown rate's going to go up.
Yeah, he's coming off 0 touchdowns. Like that's
Deontay Johnson's going to score a touchdown next year.
He's going to score a touchdown, right? There's no way that Kenny Pickett's touchdown rate is going to be 1.8% again. All right, so I think that I'm looking at
But is it going to be 6%?
As values because I can't see it possibly getting any worse. Whereas you're like, well, that's true, but what is the actual ceiling? Are these guys really going to win you games? Are they really going to win you fantasy seasons?
It's just hard for me to ever see him getting out of like that QB2 rotational bucket, right? Like he might have a season.
It's one thing to be a value, but that's where value traps happen, where you're like, oh yeah, this is,
well, that's
Deontay
the regression
Johnson's
police,
a
right?
possible value trap because you're not
you
getting
can't
the
just
ceiling outcome.
You solely can't draft off regression, right? And it's the inverse way. Like when people were going to do that thing with Cooper Kupp last year, right? They're like, well, Cooper Kupp's going to regress. Well, sure, but is he still going to be like a top 5 receiver? Probably. But like, so you look at a guy like Kenny Pickett and you say, yeah, he's going to positively regress or progress towards the mean, whatever everyone takes umbrage over.
That was all my research indicated, and you really struck it down with it. You can't draft just based solely on a reversion to the mean, You can't just regression draft. And I was like, you know what? That's true.
Because it's easy. We get in the weeds. Yeah. We look at all these and it's like, hey, this guy's got to get better, right? Well, sure. He will be. He's going to be better.
Yeah, he's going to be a better decision maker. He's going to, have some luck swing his way. But how good can he really be? Which takes you to Bryce Young. Bryce Young, same conversation, right? He's now the favorite to go 101. Stroud likely going either 101 or 102. Looking at the class, if I look at the grades that Cody has for these guys, there's a real sort of misalignment, like an incongruence of our grades and what we believe to be the grades of a lot of industry insiders and the mock drafts. That it's all in lockstep. It's Young, Stroud, Young, and then, the best players are Carter and Anderson and Paris Johnson.
Yeah,
what do you think is going to happen? Do you think they're just going to move forward and take quarterbacks that they don't have graded as high as the position players, or do you think this is a big elaborate fake out?
No, listen, the Panthers are absolutely 100% taking a quarterback. I think there's a conversation to be had with Houston where they don't, although I do ultimately believe that they will at least take a swing, because why not just take more swings? This is the one hurdle we haven't got to get over with these teams, to take more swings, because I think the Bears should have taken one of these guys for sure. Because you've got, even what you have in Fields is still kind of not set in stone. And he only has 2 years on his rookie contract, so why not get another guy on a rookie contract? Like, just the positional leverage is too much to not swing. But NFL GMs, like, that's a hurdle we haven't gotten over, right? And it's hard for people to mentally get over that.
You really think so? You really think? What about the idea of getting a left tackle that you can then build around?
Well, sure, but why not? The quarterback's the most important thing first. Like, right. Yeah. But you still might. You might not have that. What's the
probability of upgrading on Fields, though?
I think relatively high. Fields is one of the most scariest dynasty assets I think there is, and probably one of the most scariest fantasy assets coming into the season, where he's going to be drafted in redraft leagues, like pretty much 100%.
Really,
he looks a lot to me like Deebo Samuel was for his wide receiver stance last year. This is where I will play the regression police the other way, right? Like, what Fields did is not sustainable on any level last year. He led the NFL in runs of 50 or more yards. He led the NFL in rushing yards on carries of 20 or more yards. Those things are not translatable for a quarterback, even if you're a good runner.
Yeah, but one of those runs was called back due to penalty.
Yeah, he ran for more yards on 20-plus yard runs than both Josh Allen and Jalen Hurts put together last year. Like, even as a mobile quarterback, like, that shit is just not sustainable, right? Like, Deebo can sustain his role, but like what he did in 2021 was never going to be sustainable. And that's where I feel like Justin Fields is. And as a passer, Justin Fields could run himself out of the league or out of a job if he's not creating those splash plays running. His negative plays are just too high to like really sink your teeth in. And this is, if we were talking about Will Levis, this is my big Will Levis thing. Justin Fields set an NFL record for sack rate, and it's not on the Bears offensive line. It's on him. And this goes back to college. He is one of the worst quarterbacks in collegiate history and in NFL history of turning pressures into sacks. He has no quick game. I think he's scary, man. Last year he's the type of guy you bet on. He's going outside the QB1 range. Yeah. He has all this mobility. You bet on those guys. You take them at cost, and if they don't hit, you throw them back into the pool. Some people threw him back too early after those first 6 games. Then others scooped him up and rode the wave at the end of the season. But like when these guys are expensive, it's hard, man. It's because you're betting on him. Because Fields now has to have the same rushing he had last year, and now because of where he's drafted at, has to go and have one of those passing seasons that we talked about. He has to. There's no leeway at his cost now. He has to have one of those passing seasons. He didn't have to when he was QB 14, but if you're taking him at QB 6, he has to have one of those seasons to deliver one of those type of alpha seasons as a quarterback. Yeah, I mean, he's a guy that I'm terrified of Justin Fields at his cost, man. I'm terrified of him as a dynasty asset, to be honest.
His accuracy rating on Player Profiler on any given throw was 7.4. It was number 25 in the league. We grade their throws, on a scale of 1 to 4.
True Media last year had him as the most inaccurate quarterback of inaccurate throws that were tried to the quarterback. So 25 versus 33, like not a huge difference. Not good is what we're saying.
Yeah, well, there could be a qualifier in there though. It kind of it depends on how you qualify the stats. It depends on how many reps a quarterback would need in order to have a ranking. So it's probably very close. Just depends on, how many smaller sample quarterbacks are ranked versus not. The bottom line is, if you're outside the top 25, it's bad. It's really bad.
Yeah, and I like that they're at least doing things. Obviously, it's going to draw a lot of corollary to what the Eagles do with Jalen Hurts, right? Like getting A.J. Brown, getting D.J. Moore. It's the low-hanging fruit, right? Like it's the low-hanging comp. And maybe we get that. But, I mean, you look at the whole Eagles infrastructure, and it's just a lot better than the Bears. And the Bears are trending in maybe a positive direction. They still have some, red on their ledger the past years, Pulse does. But at least they're trending to build that infrastructure up. But when you build that infrastructure up, is it too late? Like, are you already Fields is done with his rookie contract, right? Like, that's where I think that some of that goes into where if I'm the Bears, like, oh man, I get another quarterback on a rookie contract, right? I mean, I leave the options open here. I get that it's a mental barrier for people to get over. I want as many like high value leverage assets as possible. But let's roll it into these 2 rookie quarterbacks that aren't Stroud and Young. So this is where Anthony Richardson absolutely is sensational. And if you want to build the upside angle for him, is the negative play angle. Anthony Richardson was pressured on a class high 37% of his dropbacks last season at Florida. And you might say, oh, well, his playing style invites pressure, like maybe Fields does. He was only credited with 19.4% of his pressures. It was a lower rate than both Bryce Young and CJ Stroud. On pressures, Anthony Richardson was only sacked on 10.1% of those pressures. It was the lowest rate of this draft class. It's phenomenal. With Anthony Richardson, a lot of people treat him as like a boom bust player. He's actually a high floor player. You may never get the ceiling, right? Like the ceiling is probably more volatile, but the floor is high because the dude he can run and he doesn't take negative plays. Like, sure, he's got inaccuracy issues, but like those are EPA just cheat codes. If you don't take sacks and you run, those are EPA cheat codes. You're going to put your team in high floor situations. So I actually think his ceiling is more volatile than people add on than people think that like his floor is like this bottom rung thing. Like he can be a pretty bad quarterback and his team can probably still be pretty good and have a pretty good offense because he doesn't have the negative plays. And you look at Will Levis was sacked on 30.4% of his pressures in college. No quarterback in this draft class at the top, Stroud, Young, Richardson were sacked on more than 13.6% of their pressures. That's triple the difference. And then when you factor in all the turnovers that Levis has, he took a class high. He took the most sacks in the red zone in this class. He threw the most interceptions in the red zone. Like those are negative plays that you can't make up on offense. Those kill you. Those kill offenses. Those kill wins in the NFL. So yeah, I mean, that's kind of like when you look at these things, like people just look at like inaccuracy, and maybe interceptable balls, but like it's a huge deal. Taking sacks is absolutely massive. The one dude that's been able to like kind of like get by with it is Joe Burrow. Like Joe Burrow's like the one dude that's like, yeah, I'll eat some sacks and like, but like none of those guys have the passing acumen that Joe Burrow has.
Justin Fields and Kenny Pickett had the same number of money throws last year.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I am interested in Fields as like a player for fantasy football, and I want him to thrive because he's one of these guys that if it does come together, he can be one of those firewall QBs. But I think betting on him to be that firewall QB in 2023 has a lot more fragility than the market does, than the market believes.
So if you were an NFL general manager, knowing how valuable the quarterback position is and how much leverage it offers, where would you draft Will Levis?
Third round, maybe late second. I think he's got to be a complete project, man. He's got to be a guy that you don't play, let him build up. You got to get him on that value deal, I think.
You can't pay him first round money.
Yeah, you got to get him on the value deal. You got to have him be something you kind of luck box into. And I think that's the NFL showed us last year. That's why I think that both of those guys could go a little lower. Richardson's a little different because he's he's like a machine. Like they don't make humans that do this. Like it's like LeBron James at quarterback. But like the NFL showed us last year that the volatility that they showed, like in Malik Willis and Desmond Ridder, everyone thought that remember Ridder was getting mad steam. Like he's going in the first round. No mock draft had Willis outside of the first round last year. No. And those dudes went in the third round. The league was like, we're not sinking into you. Like we'll give you a third round contract and hopefully we run into something. I think that's the spectrum Will Levis is on 100%. Richardson's a little different because, like I said, I think he offers a higher floor than people assume. A lot of people think he has a low floor. I actually think he has a high floor in terms of offensive structure because of what he does well and what he doesn't do bad. But Will Levis.
Well, then why isn't Richardson in play for the 101? If he has an incredibly high ceiling and a high floor, what am I missing?
I think it's just the probability of the ceiling versus the probability of like the baseline you're getting out of the other two as passers. And that's because no matter what, and even from fantasy football we talked about, like it's all still going to come down to your longevity at the position in the NFL is going to have to do on how good of a passer you are. It always will be. It's always going to get to that point. Shit, dude, we're still having the same conversations about Lamar Jackson, right? Like this whole offseason's been about this, right? Like it's the same stuff. Like the NFL from a top-down stance, and I'm not saying this is right or this is right. I'm telling you how they think. Because look at the Lamar Jackson stuff. Like if you are not built off of being like a strong passer, the NFL is always going to value that first, right? They just always are. That's the way it's built. And both Stroud and Young are just projectable as passers versus Richardson.
2,500 passing yards in 12 games, 7.8 yards per attempt, 17-9 touchdown interception ratio, and then a 6-5 touchdown interception ratio the year prior with only 64 attempts in 7 games. It sounds like Anthony Richardson was betrayed by his teammates at Florida. Isn't this been an ongoing problem with Florida? It's just one of the worst places for skill position players. Like there's just no supporting cast whatsoever.
I mean, the offense didn't do him any favors. I mean, it was one of the quarterbacks that they didn't have any quick game at all, right? It was basically a lot of Anthony Richardson make a play. It was a lot like the Ravens' real offense last year before Lamar Jackson got hurt. It was like, hey, man, if you don't do it, no one else will. But instead of like just trying to set up some short throws and things like that. But yeah, the infrastructure hasn't been great for him. I mean, he's still a complete projection, though, as a passer, right? Like for him to hit as an actual thrower of the football, because you see the comps, right? He gets comp to Cam Newton, he gets comp to Dante Culpepper, you get looser Josh Allen, and you get Jalen Hurts. All of those guys were just so much better in terms of objectable passing than Anthony Richardson was.
Well, Josh Allen
model,
wasn't.
no, Josh Allen was. I mean, Josh Allen was a 45th percentile passer. That's like right there, like in the middle ground. Anthony Richardson's 20th percentile. in my
Oh,
model since 2000. All quarterbacks that were invited to the combine since 2000. He's a 20th percentile passer. Hurts was 72nd percentile in career passing output. Will Levis, because we factor in age in my model, and he's 2 full years older than Anthony Richardson. Will Levis has a 2% percentile passing collegiate passing output. He would be the lowest first round draft pick in terms of passing grade I've given a quarterback, and my model's given a quarterback since Jason Campbell was drafted in the first round. That's where
Auburn's
Will Levis
Jason Campbell.
Yeah.
Wow.
Because
he went to Washington, right?
Because Levis is going to be a 24-year-old rookie. Like, he's 2 years older than Anthony Richardson.
And then he's 2 years younger than Malik Hooker. Not Malik Hooker.
Yeah, a year and a half.
Hendon Hooker. Hooker. Oh, I was talking about Malik Hooker with Anand Nanduri earlier today. That's funny.
Hendon Hooker, like, we can squash all the first round stuff. He's another guy like you take in the late second, maybe third round. You try to get him on that value deal because of how much he has to change his game in the NFL. He's not like Levis, where like he's got like objectively bad passing. He's got good passing. It's just the dude played in an offense that wasn't real. Like that. So Hendon Hooker threw 12 passes last season outside of the pocket. 12. That's 12 more than you and I. Like. I mean, it's just it wasn't a real offense, man. Like, he wasn't asked to do things that he's going to have to do at the NFL level.
But isn't that the trap we fell into with, isn't that why Patrick Mahomes went at 10 and not 1 because Texas Tech?
No, I think maybe Texas Tech, but like Patrick Mahomes wasn't
that the worry though? Like Patrick Mahomes, if you're from Texas Tech, you're a system quarterback. Isn't that why he didn't go 101?
But there have been a lot more Hendon Hookers, Graham Harrells, Case Keenums.
Graham Harrell's the one, man. Graham Harrell's the one.
Then there are Patrick Mahomes, that's right. Like a lot of the other, Anthony Gordon, those guys. So, I mean, I like Hooker. I like him enough. I don't like him enough taking the first round. I mean, I think his age, his injury, the adjustments he's going to have to make.
Well, the injury he tore his ACL. He's going to miss the first year.
Yeah, and just like I said, he's going to have to be asked to do things he didn't do in college. So, like, you have to project some of that on. He's a little more of a projection, right? So, yeah, I mean, I don't ever like
it's almost like a bunch of these guys are projections.
I would listen, Hooker in the second or third round is a much better pick than Will Levis in the first 7 picks.
I think Hendon Hooker's a smash. I love Hendon. I mean, because you go back through time, you have these guys with these incredible touchdown interception ratios with mobility. Those guys often perform well. I mean, there have been flameouts before, right? I'm thinking of, second, third round pick, early third round pick went to the Vikings. Do you remember who that was? Good touchdown interception ratio at Texas A&M. Good mobility. I drafted him in a rookie draft that we were in. Ring a bell?
Who was that?
I'm seeing if you can guess the player. Was drafted by the Vikings.
Oh, he's a quarterback?
Yeah.
Oh, Kellen Mond?
Kellen Mond! That's
yeah.
it. Ding, 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 ding.
He's now on the Browns.
So, now he's on the Browns. So it's not inevitable that if you're a day 2 quarterback with great touchdown interception ratio and mobility that you're going to be good. Kellen Mond is the best example of that not being the case, but it really increases your probability, right? That's the Dak Prescott corollary.
Yeah.
Especially if you
Dak
played in the
SEC,
especially,
Yeah, Dak fell only because of the DUI, though. He probably would have been higher. I mean, he's definitely on my end. He had a way higher grade objectively than where he went, but he had the DUI. I got in a little trouble before the draft.
So I bet he had a similar grade to Hendon Hooker.
His was higher, but Hooker, like I said, just when you look at it from translating, because I love the spreadsheets now. I got my nose in the spreadsheets, but like I also go watch real football too. And what Tennessee asked Hendon Hooker to do was a lot different than what Dak Prescott was asked to do in college.
Okay, so we're in a super flex draft. Okay, you and me, we're in a super flex draft. I believe that I selected Kellen Mond at the very beginning of the third round.
That's
which I think
fine.
we both agreed was the right place to pick a guy like that.
Yeah, that's fine.
I think the second, third round turn is where you got to consider drafting Hooker, if not a couple picks before that.
Yeah, I think Hooker will ultimately probably go in the top 60 picks. I don't think he's going in the first round, like the initial steam has kind of like, because this happens every year, right? Like someone gets
Ritter was steam. I'm not aware of this. Like sometimes there's conversations happening and rumors happening that I'm unaware of. I had no idea anyone was talking about this guy as a first rounder.
Yeah, it's happened like the last week. Yeah, that's happened like the last week. And we did that with Ritter last year, right? Like Ritter was the guy at this time 2 weeks prior to the draft. Everyone was like, Ritter's my QB1. He's got to go in the first round. He's gonna get. All these teams like him. He ends up going, pick 74. I think that's what Hooker probably won't fall that far. I think he'll probably go. I think he'll go in the second round, somewhere like 50 to 62, 62-ish, 65-ish.
I like it. I'm going right back to it, man. That's the reason.
I'll draft him in Superflex leagues for sure.
I was very vocal about Mariota over Winston for all those reasons, right? The efficiency, the mobility, and everyone said, hey, no, can't, Mariota's a system quarterback. Turns out he wasn't that good, right? But, I mean, that's a process I'm going to stick behind. And, and that's what would lead you to being the one that's going to say, hey, I'm going to push the button on Mahomes. Screw the system, schmistem, right?
Yeah.
So...
But that's the type of, see, Will Levis, though, if he gets drafted, say 7 or 10, in Superflex leagues, he's going to be a first-round pick.
Oh, Will Levis is a first-round pick in Superflex.
Yeah, and it's locked in. It's locked in.
But
I feel a lot better
because this is a very weak class.
Yeah, but I still feel better about, Hendon Hooker at like the 2-3 turn than I would at the top 10 pick on Will Levis.
You might have to draft some Will Levis because your choices are going to be so bad unless you trade out of the first round in Superflex. You might just have to trade the pick.
This is an interesting year because, 2023, and this happens all of us. We've all played in Dynasty for long enough to know that, like, whatever year gets billed as, like, the next year, like, never comes to fruition. Like, everyone was telling you to grab.
Yes, it did. The Jamar Chase year was bananas.
Well, that's true. I mean, but, like, everyone's been telling you to buy 2023 draft.
Najee Harris, he had one big, huge fantasy year. Lawrence, Fields, Waddle.
All right, there's one. But everyone's been telling
Javonte Williams, what could have been?
I bet this podcast was telling people to buy 2023 draft picks at a time. I guarantee you that this podcast was.
Probably.
A lot of people have been screaming from the mountaintop to grab 2023 rookie
Bryce
picks.
Young, C.J. Stroud.
It's a complete crapshoot, man. It's wide open this year.
Robinson.
And how many teams are going to draft Bijan Robinson 101 and waste him? Like how many teams that
booty?
How many teams are going to draft Bijan 101 that are in no position to even maximize Bijan Robinson being good?
Well, that's so like the 101 in this class. I've had this debate with Theo.
Because the 101, I think, is wide open, especially in Superflex leagues, depending on your team context. I have a Superflex team where I did a productive struggle last year, kind of underestimated how aggressive people were going to be on quarterbacks. So I didn't end up with any good quarterbacks and ended up with like a really good team around quarterbacks. So I had no quarterbacks. I got the 101. I had to trade the 101 because the infrastructure of my team, like Bijan, didn't help me. So I had to trade him because he wasn't going to help me. I had to trade out of that pick. There's going to be a number of teams that just take Bijan because he's the locked-in best player and have no business taking him. And he's not going to help their fantasy team at all. Whereas maybe if you just swing on an Anthony Richardson, right? Because remember, you get these rookie picks for free. You get them. You just get them. Add it on to your roster.
Listen to you. All these rookie picks, they're just given to you. They don't cost a thing.
They're given to you, man.
Yeah,
you get them at the end
free.
Of the season. So why not swing on a guy like Anthony Richardson? I'm someone that drafted N'Keal Harry in the first round. Like, you think I'm gonna be scared to take Anthony Richardson 101? Like, because if I have no quarterbacks, I have to swing, right? I have to swing for that mountaintop because it's the only way my dynasty team can get better. Bijan Robinson ain't gonna make it better if I got quarterbacks.
You better be trading down, bro.
Yeah, but it's hard to trade down. People always say just trade down, just trade out of one.
Well, if you have the 101, you can trade down.
Man, good luck, man. It's hard.
Good luck
trading the teams that want Bijan. The teams that want Bijan in your league are already good. Those are the teams that want Bijan. So you're going to trade down to 110? You traded out of 101 to get the 110, 111, 112. You're not doing that. You've got to trade him for like Trevor Lawrence or like
you've got to try to get a 2024 pick and hope that team has some injuries, and then you get a top 5 pick next year.
You have to get a quarterback that's either right on the firewall or right below it, like a Trevor Lawrence, and a pick coming back or something like that, like to get like for teams that are stronger. But like, you're not trading out of 101 to go back to the teams that really want Bijan. The teams that really want Bijan in your league are good, that can use him to win fantasy leagues.
This is an important point. And I was talking to Dario and Theo today about this, in that there's no benefit, right? Because we were talking about our win now versus rebuild mode of the rankings and the lifetime values. And like, there's no value to a rebuilding team that Bijan offers, right? There's a few players like a Javonte Williams where you're actually getting some additional value because to a win now team, they're terrified, but as long as you don't need to be competitive until 2024, you would actually value Javonte Williams a lot more than they would. Or a developmental quarterback in Superflex is the best example of Anthony Richardson's the best example of what you're talking about. Right.
Because even the guys that are picking 102, 103, 104, where you're like, all right, I can get out of 101 and still get a quarterback at worst case scenario. Those teams probably don't have good quarterbacks if they're in your Superflex leagues picking there. Yeah. Maybe you got lucky and someone had injuries and they're up there and they've got some quarterback depth and they can say, hey, I will give you one of these quarterbacks and 104 to come up and get Bijan because he matters to me. But those instances are very nuanced and very probably selective.
I can give you like 3 running backs that are technically rebuild running backs: Javonte Williams, Jahmyr Gibbs, and like Kendre Miller. There's a handful because remember, Saquon Barkley's best year was his rookie year. Bijan Robinson is a win-now asset. He is a 20-year-old win-now asset. So most running backs are not really going to add anything to a rebuilding team. And it's a whole mindset. Yay, I get the 101 on my rookie draft. I'm rebuilding. This is perfect. I could get this building block running back. Yeah, but if you think your realistic first year to be competitive is 2025, that's half of the first 4 years of Bijan, and he's already halfway to the age apex, which is 24.5 for running backs. So it is in your best interest, if you don't believe you can compete this year and you have the 101, to trade it to someone who is in win now mode and get as much as you can in return that you can, especially in Superflex, if you can somehow turn it into a quarterback if you're not set at quarterback.
It's really the only options you've got if you're in that spot now. Yeah, it's really interesting because I think
it's a debate because some people are like it's Bijan.
Well, because he's clearly the best fantasy player.
I love Bijan and I'm all about Bijan and get Bijan, and it's like
he's clearly the best fantasy player. But like,
I love Bijan, and I'm not saying don't draft Bijan, but there's a nuanced conversation for those that happen to be in a situation where they realistically are not competing for a championship this year. The whole equation shifts.
Inversely, if you have some of those quarterbacks, if you got lucky, like you could probably try to acquire him.
That's right. And on the flip side, I couldn't agree with you more. These people that overly covet quarterbacks in Superflex and they just refuse to trade because they might be down to 4 quarterbacks and they really want 5 or whatever it is. The quarterback hoarders that are like, listen, do you want to win or not? Because this is your opportunity. You've got a rebuilding team with a 101 that is going to be drafting Bijan unless you go get him. They need a quarterback. Like they're weak at their QB2 position. The ground is fertile for a deal.
Yep.
You should be pushing it. Go win a championship and risk. Yes, if you have a couple injuries at quarterback, you're going to be in a tough spot. Oh, well, if you don't have those injuries, you probably win the championship. This is what it takes to win championships. You have to take some risk.
Yeah, the problem is that the majority of gamers that have the 101 in your league are just dead set on taking Bijan because he's the best player, and they're gonna want to twist your arm for it, right?
This
Like
is what I'm
oversell it,
saying.
and they're not gonna look at the context of their team, and they're gonna die, right? They're gonna probably die a slow death because of it. Because yeah, your dynasty team might pick up a good player, but your dynasty team isn't gonna be good. So
Even
it's
worse,
rough, man.
Saquon was the worst of all worlds. If you took him at the 101, your team's not ready. He actually hurt you the next year by inflating your fantasy point total and getting you a worse pick the following year, and
Right?
you
Yes.
benefited nothing. You got nothing out of it. He actually hurt you. Think
Because you
about
probably picked
that.
103 instead of one, or 104, right?
It's wild. Like, why would you do this? But you listen to enough podcasts and you read enough articles
Well, it's
about,
tough if you're just a gamer
yeah.
and you're following, podcasts and written content. Like you've known for years, like for 2 years, people have telling you that about Bijan Robinson, right? Like like it's been cemented. So it's like hard to like unindoctrinate yourself from that.
And it is, it's a sexy feeling to get like a very highly coveted asset. He's right there. You have the pick. It was free, according to you, Rich. It's a free thing. It's just it fell out of the sky.
You got it for sucking.
You got it. Congrats on sucking. Go get Bijan. It's like, maybe not. Make the effort to see what you can get. And if you're at all weak at quarterback in super flex or 2 quarterback leagues, if you're anything other than super strong at that position, you're required to go put that thing out there and shop it around.
Have to. Got to do it, man.
Have to. Now, what is your feeling? Let's say you are an NFL. Let's say you're the Carolina Panthers.
Which I'm definitely not.
I mean, would you go Bryce Young or would you go Stroud or would you go Anthony Richardson?
I would if it was me and if I was the GM and not the head coach, because the GM is probably going to outlast the head coach. I would probably swing for maybe the upside of Richardson, but probably Stroud. Just because I think Stroud's ceiling's being undersold, actually.
Thank you. That's a great take.
This is
so right.
This is the thing about where people come out with the running back things where running backs can't catch passes, but like they just were never asked to in college because they didn't have to. I think people are assuming that Stroud can't run and he's immobile like some of the other like guys. Like he can move, and we've seen it not just in the championship game against Georgia. It wasn't the championship game. Sorry, it was the go to the championship game against Georgia where he was really good outside of structure. But 2 weeks prior, Ohio State played Northwestern in a game that had like it was played in like torrential wind, like it was like crazy, and no one could throw, and they just used Stroud in the RPO game, and he was awesome. He was awesome in that game. If you're Ohio State and you have two offensive tackles that are going in the first round, you've literally just been plucking 5-star wide receivers out of the heavens for the last 8 years, and you've got the most accurate passer in college football. Why the hell would he be running a lot? Like, why would he be running a lot? He didn't have to run. Don't misconstrue that, though, that like Stroud isn't athletic and can't run and will not run at the NFL level. I think that he definitely has, some upside rushing the football that a lot of people are discounting and believing that he just can't do because he didn't have to do it. Now, the next Ohio State quarterback is always going to be the next guy that has to like knock down that firewall of like, well, look at these guys play in the system with all these awesome players. Like until one of these guys are good, I'm not going to believe it, right? Like that's just going to exist. It existed for Derrick Henry and Alabama running backs. It existed for Melvin Gordon in Wisconsin. It's just always going to exist. But we still have to treat these guys on an individual case-by-case basis. Just saying I'm never going to take Ohio State quarterback, that seems like cutting off your nose, man, despite your face. Like you can't get down that road.
Do you know what the career high season rushing yard total for Justin Fields at Ohio State?
Hit me with it.
484 yards. That's it.
But you know why, though?
in 14 games.
Well, there's a caveat there, though. It's because the dude probably took 400 yards in sacks, and in college football got knocked for it. We brought that back.
It's because of the sacks. The sacks.
Also, that's the dumbest thing ever. Who started that sack yardage counts as rushing yardage for college? Was it just like an easy thing? Like someone like, was this just makes life easier? Because there's no way that should still be a thing.
It doesn't make sense. It's not a rushing
I don't know how
yard
it started and why it's a thing still.
A lot of these, they're not trying to run. Most sacks are in the pocket.
Why is there not a campaign to like get this removed?
Stupid. It's stupid. Do you know who the offensive coordinator was last year for CJ Stroud?
The offensive coordinator? No, I don't remember his name.
Kevin Wilson. Does that ring a bell?
No. Who was he with?
Kevin Wilson was the offensive coordinator. I know. I believe he took the head coaching job at Tulsa. I believe so. I think it was Kevin Wilson. You don't have a
Kevin Wilson take.
You don't remember that?
I don't have a Kevin Wilson take. I don't know a lot of college offensive coordinators. I'm not typically going like that far down if they don't stand out. But
okay, so I'm looking at the Kevin Wilson record. He was the offensive coordinator under at Oklahoma under Bob Stoops. Then he became the head coach at Indiana. And then he was the offensive coordinator at Ohio State. Now he's the head coach at Tulsa. Do you know where he was before
Ohio State?
Before Oklahoma?
No. Where was he?
Northwestern University. He was the offensive coordinator and quarterbacks coach. And he was also the coach that I worked under at Northwestern.
Oh, hey.
That's right. Kevin Wilson. And I can tell you that we did not run the ball, and we had quarterbacks that could run the ball, and they were actively told not to. This is a precision passing system that they developed at Northwestern in the late 90s, and it is actually was based on the Rams were developing the same offense in parallel. And so there were relationships that some of the coaches at Northwestern had with Dick Vermeil and the Rams staff, and so there was some idea sharing and some ideating between. And then Northwestern actually innovated and did a lot of the perpetual 5 wide receiver sets because the thinking was we can't out-athlete Ohio State, but what we can do is we can run and gun them, and we can catch fire with the passing game, and we can out-efficiency them with the passing game with short passes. And basically, it's the Bill Walsh theory turned all the way up for passing game efficiency being the path to victory, and they ended up winning a bunch of games. And Kevin Wilson famously yelled at me when I let my buddy run practice. Basically, you spot the ball in team drills and 7-on-7, and I was in charge of spotting the ball. I was the senior equipment manager, and I worked with the quarterback, so I knew the right balls to use, and I knew where I was experienced, right? I knew where what hash to put things, the ball and everything else. So, and then I was trying to get my buddy who had joined to start to do this. Like, he asked me if it was okay if he started, and I ran it by the head of equipment management, and I said, hey, is it okay? Bob wants to start doing some of the spotting. Do you mind if I let him, and try to show him? And then lo and behold, what ends up happening, somehow he spots the ball and ends up behind the quarterback, and the quarterback tripped over him during a drill, which is hard to do. Okay, that never happened to me my whole time as an equipment. Never happened to me. Okay, and I remember the name of the quarterback. It was a backup quarterback named Nick Kreinbrink. Nick Kreinbrink tripped over my friend Bob, and Kevin Wilson saw this, and he was like, "What the fuck, right? What is happening?"
And then it was my rhythm,
he went and he pointed at Bob. He pointed right at him, and he thought it was me. Right? And he realized it wasn't me. And he didn't know this guy's name, right? He's only worked with me, right? All day, every day. Like, you know, we're in Kenosha, Wisconsin, doing 2-a-days, right? And he was like also shocked that I wasn't the one spotting the ball. And then he's wheeling around looking for me. And
Good job.
Dude, you should have seen, like, I was so scared because I was just standing on the sideline, like, because I thought Bob had it. Like, he had spotted it just fine, like, for a bunch of times in a row. I was finally feeling like he got it, right? And then when Wilson saw me and he pointed at me, and his voice was already cracking and totally gone at that point in the practice, right? Because these coaches, they lose their voice every practice. And he's like, no, man, and get out of here! Get out of my practice!
You'd be a good coach. You'd be a good coach.
Yeah, his voice
like
was gone.
You can yell.
And it was like, he was like, get out of here! You know, you couldn't even tell what he was saying, but you knew his face was red. He was so fucking mad. And then I was like, and then I looked around and everyone's like, you got to go. You got to leave. You could go somewhere. Leave. You know, and I was like, and I just shuffled off. And it was one of the more embarrassing moments of my entire life because the whole team, at that, it was 7-on-7. But here's the thing. This was the worst. It was 7-on-7, but they had blown the whistle and they were all coming together for 11-on-11. And the head coach and the defense had all arrived just in time to see this whole scene unfold. So it was in front of the entire, over 100 dudes with the training staff, everything. It was probably 150 people saw this. It was
bodied.
I was so embarrassed. It was crazy. And I barely slept. I didn't know what to do. Like, the next practice, I was terrified, and the guys, all the quarterbacks, were like laughing at me, and they were wondering what was going to happen when coach showed up, you know, because we're just warming up and whatever. And I was terrified. I was like, what is it going to, is he going to have replace me with somebody else? Like, am I not working with quarterbacks anymore? What am I going to do? He clearly hates me. This is a big problem. What am I going to say? And then he comes up to me and pats me on the back. He's like, hey, Maddie. Like, it never happened. It was like nothing. It was like I didn't know if he forgot or like this is just how these guys operate. They're so psycho in the moment, and then the next day they just reset the hard drive.
Yep. Got to, man. You have to. They're wired like different beasts, man.
It's just a different frame of human. It's just a different wiring
structure. They have
structure.
to too, man. They have to be.
They have to be. It was crazy. So when someone so I'm like, you don't know whether CJ Stroud is going to run or not in the NFL. We'll see, but you got to talk to some people at Ohio State that are close to the program and understand what his rushing ability actually is, because you cannot look at his college resume. It's not going to tell you anything. Especially with those weapons. I mean, they're going to say to CJ, hey, these receivers are way too good for you to be running the ball, and you're too valuable.
Are we calling an RPO, or are we gonna, get the ball to Marvin Harrison?
Exactly. I mean, he runs a 4.74, and that's fast enough. We've seen plenty of guys that run a 4.74, 4.7 in that area, run for hundreds of yards, 500 yards in a season in the NFL. It's very plausible.
Yeah, so I mean, I think he's being undersold a little bit in that department, for sure. And you also tipped us in, like, I think if you play college fantasy football, Matthew Kelly is telling you to get Tulsa players.
Oh yeah, Tulsa offense is going to be good. I mean, listen, the guy is really good at yelling, and he's bounced around a lot. But you don't just go to Oklahoma to work under Bob Stoops, and then you get washed out. Trying to turn around Indiana, and then the next phone call you get's from Ohio State if you're not good. Right? A lot of people that wash out in Indiana don't get a call from Ohio State the next day.
No.
All right. So that's all I'll say about Kevin Wilson. He knows what he's doing.
Oh, you got to dig it, man.
What about Trey Lance? Does he know what he's doing?
Do we know anything? I mean,
do we know anything about Trey Lance?
Nothing, man. Nothing, to be honest. We're just ostriches with our heads in the dirt. Uh, just hoping nothing bad happens anyway. Again, I mean, Trey Lance graduated high school in 2018. He's thrown 430 passes since then.
I know. I mention it all the time. And
I
most
mean,
of those
what-
passes were at North Dakota State.
It's really hard, man. It's really hard. All the stuff. I will say this from the 49ers angle, it still makes sense to go back to Trey Lance because this is the Shanahan hubris. God, that shit drives me crazy. The 49ers are so damn good, and they've been good with, Shanahan's gotten production out of Nick Mullins and CJ Beathard. He's made the NFC Championship game twice with Jimmy Garoppolo. Brock Purdy last year comes in. Imagine how fucking good the 49ers would be if they actually had a quarterback with like actual talent. And I don't know if that is Trey Lance. I'm just saying the 49ers cannot settle. Like Brock Purdy is not going to roll back a 9% touchdown rate, right? Like he can squeeze efficiency out of these guys that are less talented, but just imagine the 49ers would win so many Super Bowls if they just were able to get influx, like just an actual talented quarterback that has an actual true ceiling. They're scoring 30 points a game without one. This offense is downright nasty. And imagine if like you just had like a quarterback that was actually like supremely talented that you didn't have to rely on just like coaxing all this stuff out of. Like there's an absolute ceiling that should frighten the whole NFL about the 49ers. Like it should be terrifying.
What quarterback could you see realistically landing there that's not Trey Lance, that's better than Purdy, that would excite you?
That's available right now?
That you can see either available or becoming available in a year.
I mean, just it's Lance, right? Like when you're talking about just the upside factor, they're not going to get any of these rookies because they don't have any picks because they used them all to get Lance. It has to be. They have to go back to him.
Yeah.
They won't. They probably won't because it feels like they're already building the insulation. I'm not even saying like
What
he's
about
the
like a
answer,
Daniel
right?
Jones?
Like, I'm not even defending Lance.
What would Daniel
saying,
Jones be in San Francisco?
He'd be the same thing. It'd be coaxing. It'd be manufacturing. It'd be what Dayball did last year. It would be all
right,
manufacturing.
So you're not thinking that Daniel Jones would be any kind of upgrade.
No, like an actual like guy that has like the ceiling to be like a front end quarterback in the NFL. If the 49ers ever had a front end quarterback, they would be absolutely hard to like really beat. Like they almost beat Mahomes with Garoppolo in the Super Bowl. If Jimmy Ward doesn't drop an arm punt, they go back to the Super Bowl 2 years ago. Last year, who knows what happens in the Eagles game if Purdy doesn't get hurt? Like it's, but like just imagine if this team had a quarterback that had access to like a true ceiling. Because they're getting like he's getting baseline and elevating these guys.
Like that year the Rams got out of Stafford.
Like, my goodness, this team would run roughshod, especially in the NFC. Like, Jesus, the NFC, they
would
blow through all those teams. But, like, because they're making the NFC, they're, like, competing to win Super Bowls with these guys. Like, imagine. I don't know. This is not me defending Lance and saying Lance is locked into it, but, like, he, in the range of outcomes, still has a higher ceiling than these other guys. Plus, you already have them. If you have to go back to Purdy, if you have to go to Sam Darnold, that's a luxury that you have. But I think you go into this season trying to access that ceiling and harness that ceiling.
We know that he is working out. We know that he's trying to develop his skills. He's hanging out with Mahomes.
Yeah, he's got that Rich Hribar hairline too going.
The Rich Hribar.
Yeah, you see in that picture, man. I mean,
he's a young man.
Yeah, it happens, man. It happens. Yeah, that's the
supplements.
Can happen
to anybody.
Them supplements will get your hair out quick.
You think it's supplements?
No, I'm just bullshit.
I don't know what it is. What I've also seen rumors that Brandon Ayuk could be traded. Did you
think
see
so?
That?
I don't know how true that is. I mean, obviously, I don't know. I mean, he was a first round pick, so they have the 5th-year option available for him. Unlike the Bengals have to get a deal with T. Higgins done or franchise tag him. But the 49ers have an extra year of slapping the 5th year on Brandon Ayuk. Plus, they also have the luxury to kind of do something front-ended because, remember, all their quarterbacks aren't making any money.
That's right.
So the 49ers can do something short-term still because even if you go with Purdy and Lance, like they're not making any money. basically is what I'm saying in terms of the what good teams are paying quarterbacks. So they do have a luxury to give Ayuk something here. Ayuk's an interesting dude. Like, man, he's almost a skip and a throw from that Bateman conversation we had earlier. Because he's the opposite, like a little bit. Because he's like a proven good player, but like is just in this system to where like he can't get over that fantasy hump, right?
No. It's a low volume. Like you said, it's the Bateman trap where you have a run first offense. There's just not enough pass volume, even for an efficient wide receiver, to put up consistent fantasy performances where you're going to feel good about starting him.
Yeah, Ayuk has 9 wide receiver 1 scoring weeks since he entered the NFL. 5 of those have come with Deebo Samuel out of the game. He's missed the game. Also, if Purdy starts, Purdy and Deebo, like they had something last year. With both Purdy and Deebo Samuel on the field, Deebo had a 28% of the team targets. Ayuk had lower than a full yard per route run with Deebo on the field with Purdy. Purdy was not hooking Brandon Ayuk up. Only game he did was the Raiders game when Deebo didn't play.
No Deebo.
So yeah, it sucks, man. And this is the Kittle thing, right? Like the difference between Kittle though is he plays the right position where you can live with it, because his floor at the tight end position, his floor weeks you can live with because everyone else is taking floor weeks on at the position outside of Travis Kelce owner. And his spike weeks are still strong enough to provide an advantage at the position. So you live with Kittle in this offensive frustration that of like, hey, Kittle should be getting 8 targets a game. Why the fuck isn't Kittle getting his targets? But because he plays tight end, he's still a good fantasy asset. Whereas Ayuk can never get over that firewall of being like a season-long wide receiver 2, but actually a weekly wide receiver 3 flex guy because of the offense he's in. It's a bummer. We need him freed. We need him freed for sure.
I did appreciate you referencing Kyle Shanahan's ego and his hubris, because that is a problem. The fact that it's
a real thing.
He can turn water into wine with any 7th round pick that walks through the door is a problem for the franchise that I have referenced many times, and I don't see many other people talking about it, but it is a problem.
It's a real thing with him for sure.
Thank you. Thank you for saying that.
And honestly, he probably cost them going to the Super Bowl 2 years ago against the Rams, right? Like, you punt on that 4th and 2, let the Rams right back. Last year, this is the only time I've ever seen this happen in the NFL. Do you remember this? Thursday night last year, the 49ers played the Seahawks, and they won the game. It doesn't matter. The 49ers got the Seahawks to jump off sides on like a 4th and 6, and it moved them up to like 4th and 1 from the 41, and they still punted. Like, what the fuck?
Why?
It happened, though. I was like, what?
These guys get these reputations as geniuses, and they do that shit, and you're like, how is this? This is not in line with your reputation at all. Who are you? Now, looking at this class, just for actionable advice for Dynasty, are you just trying to get out of this class altogether? I mean, we talked about it with the 101, depending on your team structure and when your competition window is, you could absolutely be actively shopping the 101. Beyond the 101, is this a run and hide type draft class? Because the wide receiver class, super weak.
I don't know if it's run and hide, but I definitely moved a lot. Like I said, when everyone was screaming for the mountaintop to buy 2023 draft picks, I was like, "Woo, seems like a pretty good time to get rid of these. Like, try to get something for these." And now that I came around, I'm not sad that I sold a lot of these. I mean, I have very few first-round picks this year. I don't feel sad for not having it. I will say this, though. This class in particular, just the way the NFL is structured, is going to create a lot of value in this draft. Like, we're going to look back on this rookie draft and we're going to be like, wow, man, you got this guy in the 2nd round, you got this guy in the 2nd round, and they were hits, because it reminds me of the 2019 from a wide receiver context, where no one really loved the top of the draft class, but like there was still such a need for wide receivers. Like, these guys run into opportunities, and you have Deontay Johnson, DK Metcalf, Arthur Juan, Terry McLaurin. All these guys end up hitting in that draft class, but everyone was scared. All these guys
like Arthur who? Oh, AJ Brown, right?
Yeah, I gotta call him Arthur Juwan now. I'm sorry, because he corrected it on Twitter. I gotta get in the habit of saying Juwan.
Okay.
Uh, but there's just too much of a league-wide need at wide receiver, right? Like I'm doing team needs series at Sharp Football Analysis, and like every team I've done so far, even the teams that have good wide receivers need wide receivers,
Right.
because the context of teams not having enough depth to even run 3 wide receiver sets, and then accounting for injuries. I mean, look at the Bengals.
We talked about a team that I think we could agree at least has 2 strong first and second wide receivers. Theoretically, if you combine them into one guy, it's at least one good receiver, right? Who's the number 3 in Pittsburgh?
Yeah, it's got to be Calvin Austin right now, right?
Who the fuck is it? Like, you go through a lot of these teams, and it's like I definitely know their first 2 receivers. They're both solid. Who's the number 3? Even Odell is now in Baltimore. Who's the number 3 in Baltimore?
And look at the NFL when they throw 3 or more wide receivers on the field now, more than ever. I brought the Bengals, yeah, and to get that point, like the Bengals have one of the best wide receiver trios, 1 through 3 in the league, but all of those guys have missed time the past 2 years, and it's impacted their offense. They average, with all 3 of Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, and Tyler Boyd on the field the past 2 years, the Bengals average 5.9 yards per offensive play. It's almost among the best you can have in the NFL. With even one of those guys off the field, it drops to 4.7 yards per play. It doesn't matter who the fuck the guy is. Like, that's significant. And they've had, like, even if you have 3 wide receivers, you need a 4th guy because you're probably not going to have everybody play all 17 games. You need guys to rotate in. The NFL just has a league-wide wide receiver shortage. And even though this class may not be top-down talented, these guys are going to get opportunity. And it's the opposite for the running backs. The running back class is more talented than the wide receiver class. There ain't a lot of jobs for these guys. There's just too many viable players at running back in the NFL compared to jobs, and the wide receiver is the opposite.
Yeah, it's not everyone can't land in Chicago, Atlanta, Miami.
So you should want a lot of second and third round picks, I think, in this class to take swings on these guys. Because I think when we look back a couple years down the road from this draft class, you're going to have a lot of hits, I think, in the second and third round from a lot of these guys, because the opportunity is just going to be for these guys to succeed, like it was with that 2019 class.
The running backs, though, especially, I'm seeing a bunch of second rounds, especially in Superflex, where you've got Roshan Johnson, Kendre Miller, Abanikanda was in the second round, no longer. And then you've got some interesting wide receivers, right? Marvin Mims is getting steamed up, so he's probably not at least very far into the second round. Jonathan Mingo is actually the only wide receiver that I can tell that has even anything close to a traditional alpha profile, unless I'm missing something. This is wild. And I can tell you, based on the team needs that and the value of wide receivers, and think about the Christian Kirk contract, what these wide receivers are commanding. Zay Flowers is going in the first round. Okay, so this talk about 1 wide receiver in the first round, that's nonsense. Probably 3, right? Probably JSN.
Yeah, I think Flowers. We could even see 4. I think it'll probably be 3, maybe 4. Like I said, it's just too much of a need, especially these. Think about every team that got bounced out of the playoffs last year, what the conversation was on Monday morning for those teams. Bills lose. What happens? Bills just need more guys around Stephon Diggs. Cowboys lose. Hey, Dak needs more guys other than CeeDee Lamb. These teams, the teams that are trying to win, they need guys to come in and make plays for them. So I think in the bottom of the third, again, we'll see that little rush. The bottom third of the draft.
Think about the Giants. Wan'Dale Robinson's not even going to be ready. What are they paying Paris Campbell? $1.5 million? They're paying. So the Giants are in desperate need of wide receiver help. The Vikings, 2 picks earlier, have no number 2, right? KJ Osborne is a number 3 slot receiver with some juice. I like him. He's kind of a slot plus, but he's not a true number 2 in the league.
Nope.
So they need something, right? They need to replace Adam Thielen. And you just go down the board. You talked about Buffalo. Yeah, so there's so many spots in the bottom 8 picks for wide receivers to land, and those are great landing spots. Those are landing spots with some of the top quarterbacks in the league. It's great.
Yeah, the Chiefs still might be in that mix too. I mean,
yeah.
The Chiefs season last year. I mean, almost like Patrick Mahomes' season was kind of almost undervalued last year, But, no Kansas City wide receiver caught more than 4 touchdowns last year. They lose the guy that led their team in targets, receiving yards, catches. Justin Watson ran the third most routes on the team. He's still a free agent. He's out there. Obviously, they're counting on Tony to take a step forward. But Mahomes led the league in passing touchdowns and yards still. Here's the thing, the catch with the Chiefs still too, and I don't know if they've fully embraced this yet and understand something we talked about when I was on your show during the season last year. Eventually, Travis Kelce is going to miss a game. I don't know when. It hasn't happened yet, but just by age, there's going to be a transition period where the Chiefs have to move on from Travis Kelce too. It's not this year. Maybe he doesn't miss a game again this year, but if Travis Kelce were to miss any time, this offense is filled with bums and Mahomes. Travis Kelce did so much lifting last year in this
what
offense
about
with
Justin
Mahomes.
Ross?
Maybe. It's, listen, fingers crossed.
Come on, man. Get out of
here. Hopium all the way.
Hopium with Justin Ross, Hopium with Kadarius Toney.
Yeah, it's all Hopium with these guys. Sky Moore.
They desperately need. That's why there was a rumor that it was Brandon Ayuk going to Kansas City. They need somebody, and I think Zay Flowers will be gone by then, but maybe they luck out. Maybe, and Jordan Addison is there.
There's a lot of guys. Obviously, any of the players fit what the Chiefs want to do. Andy Reid is going to put these guys in optimal positions, and Mahomes is going to try as well if they actually live up to their talent. I think that was the thing with Sky Moore last year, right? You can say what you want about Sky Moore, but and still having optimism, but he wasn't good when he played last year. There's a reason why he wasn't playing over Justin Watson, right? He wasn't very good, and they couldn't play him. So maybe it gets better this year. You hold on to that hope. This is the Chiefs stigma too. We're gonna do it. Pacheco probably. He's probably gonna be overvalued. We did it with CH when he came out. It's always gonna happen forever through the course of time because of Mahomes. Because this is how good Mahomes is. Anyone that gets attached there, we're gonna elevate. We just are. We're gonna hold.
What if I look at Cody's big board? I'm gonna look at Cody's big board right now. The number 4 wide receiver on his big board is Josh Downs. Josh Downs goes to Kansas City. There's a lot of enthusiasm, but there's a lot of fantasy gamers are not going to want to invest too heavily in a 5'9", 170-pound wide receiver.
He'll end up in the first round. Sky Moore ended up in the first round last year.
It's going to happen.
McCole Hardman, first round.
More importantly,
CH 101 over Jonathan Taylor.
Over the last 5 years, it's been a dramatic shift. And I don't understand whether this is a high school football sourcing issue. This is a change in an emphasis in college, which is changing the player pool and the talent pool, or that NFL teams are self-selecting these types of wide receivers. But compared to 5 years ago, when we had A.J. Brown and D.K. Metcalf in the same draft class from Mississippi, we are so far removed from Metcalf and A.J. Brown in a draft class together, looking at all of these sub 185-pound wide receivers. What do you think is going on?
I can't pinpoint it. Obviously, I came on this show at this April show, the draft. I think it was 3 or 4 years ago, and we talked about this.
Yeah.
I was like, listen, skate to where the puck is going. And you still see it when Addison weighed, obviously you'd like to see Addison be a lot better athlete than what he was at his weight. When you look back at the last 5 years, all these early round wide receivers, they're all sub 200 pounds. Now they're getting to be sub 185, right? Garrett Wilson was 183 at the combine last year. Jalen Waddle was 180. The NFL is moving. These guys are leaner. They're more versatile. They play other positions. And the NFL, the way it is played defensively, makes these guys more viable too as well, because you're seeing the NFL is playing a lot less man coverage. Look at last year. It was the lowest man coverage rate over the past decade. They're blitzing less. They're playing a lot more shell coverage. They're not trying to give up big plays. So these guys that are, more versatile, they can do more things. They can get open on shallow levels, getting separation early in routes. These guys are what teams are moving towards. And this is what the player is looking like entering the NFL. And I can't say exactly why it's looking like that, from a science, a sports science, but it's there. And we called it 4 or 5 years ago on this show. And it shouldn't be catching anyone off guard by now. that like this is happening. Granted, if we do end up with a guy that checks all the boxes, we'll probably elevate him, and the NFL will value that. I mean, like Quentin Johnson, just because of his size alone and his athletic profile, will get drafted. Like teams will be like, because traditional NFL guys, because a lot of old guys still have jobs, will be like, yeah, that's what a wide receiver looks like. I want him. I'll move that up the board because that's what it looks like to me. But yeah, this has been going on for the last half decade, and it feels like people still like hem and haw about it, about wide receiver weight and stuff. And it's like, dude, this is a new game, man. Like you gotta get ahead of here, man. Stop. Don't discount a guy because he's sub 200 pounds now.
Oh, no, sub 200.
Well,
The new
general,
bar
yeah.
is 175. And I feel like a year from now it's going to be 170, and then I feel like 2 years from now it's going to be 165.
No, you still have to be good. Like you can't be Tutu Atwell. And like
I don't know. I mean, if Tutu Atwell was before his time, if Tutu Atwell came out 5 years later, he'd be a superstar. That's what it's feeling like.
You win the second round.
This is happening so fast. Like the world is changing so fast where I just look at the draft class and I look and I go down and I see all the height numbers and the weight numbers of all these guys. And I'm like, this is hard to believe.
Yeah, it's true, man. I mean, it's definitely been there, and it also makes a lot of people, kind of say like elevate some of the guys that fit that traditional archetype because we've been indoctrinated, to say like this is the kind of guy you want, like this is what a wide receiver one looks like, right?
Josh Downs, 190, 171. Quentin Johnson, 208, yay. Jonathan Mingo, 226, yay. Cedric Tillman, 213, yay. Then it's right back down to Mims at 183, Reed at 191. High at 176.
I mean, you're generally like thrilled when you get a guy like that you like Trey. I like Trey Palmer, and I'm like, ooh, Trey Palmer, like 193, like all right.
I was just having this conversation. I was literally just having this conversation with Cody. I said, listen, I like Trey Palmer because Trey Palmer has a reason why he wasn't as productive as some of these other guys because he was trapped at this in LSU with all these other wide receivers, and they were still playing him a little bit, even with Jamar Chase there, and more recently Terrace Marshall there. He was getting some reps, a lot of special teams, but they were at least getting him on the field because they wanted him to stretch the field. They wanted him to create more room for everybody else. Then he goes to Nebraska and he puts up over 1,000 yards, and he was the fastest wide receiver at the combine. And he has an incredibly intense work ethic.
Kick return. He's got a kick return resume that's awesome.
He has a whole special teams resume.
We like
in addition to being a dominant producer in his final year. So if there's a reason why it took you longer to break out than the average player, and that was because of where you ended up, and it's not that he was at JUCO, like if he was D.D. Westbrook, right? Old breakout because he was at JUCO. That's a red flag to me, okay? It's actually better if you're a 5-star high school guy, you end up at LSU and you end up playing with incredible talents all around you, or at least it's just a little bit more difficult to crack. Even a Kayshon Boutte, he comes in with such an incredible pedigree that, initially you're not going to get reps over that guy. You're just not. So if you're not getting the reps and you have a schism with the coaching staff and you end up at Nebraska, and then when you end up at Nebraska, you're actually putting up huge numbers. You actually are 190. So that was really cool to see a guy at 190 run a 4.33. Suddenly that's a big deal.
Yeah, I think that shopping lane is going to be where we look back at this class. Like I said, if you have second and third round picks and you're looking at trying to get just like a hodgepodge of Mims, Trey Palmer, Rashee Rice, maybe Cedric Tillman, like, or whatever your flavor choice is.
Tillman,
though, right?
for sure, Michael Wilson, all those guys.
Wings, right? Like you getting a few bites at the apple in that tier of guys, because those guys are probably going to go all in the draft relatively similarly, and they're going to have opportunity, man. So, like, I think that's when we look back, like that tier of guys, and I have all those guys in the same tier too as well. I don't think there's a lot separating those guys.
And I could see us setting the all-time record for third-round wide receivers.
Yeah, so, I
Typically,
mean,
there are more
that's
wide
what you want.
receivers drafted in round 2 than round 3. But I could see this year there just being an all-time record set for third-round wide receivers, and most of them bust, right? We talked about Devin Duvernay's. They're usually the Devin Duvernay's, but there's going to be, say, 30% that are not Duvernay that are actually good.
Yeah,
And
but I think
in
the
this
second
class,
round
I could see
guys.
a decent percentage of them being producers.
What I think from a top down stance, I'm trying to say is I don't see a really wide gap from the start of the next tier of guys and that you're going to be taking in the second round area versus the guys that are going like late round 1, right? I would not be blown away like if Trey Palmer ended up being like arbitrage version of Zay Flowers, right? Like how shocked would you be? Like
Not at all.
probably like not really at all. So that's why I think that's the area where you want to get a lot of picks in that area. And have a couple bites of the apple because they all aren't going to hit. Obviously, you're not going to be banking on your second round rookie picks to hit, but we're going to run into looking back, I think, in this draft class and saying like, no, there was a lot better players than it was accounted for because the top wasn't as good as recent years. There was no Jamar Chase. It wasn't as good as the front, but I definitely believe we're going to come out of this draft with actual hits though at the wide receiver position.
Well, we have Jackson Smith and Jigba.
Yeah, we got him.
We know he's good.
He's good.
We do. That's a big deal. We do have a guy that can carry us at the top of this. That's a big deal. Is there a particular wide receiver? We've mentioned Tillman. We've mentioned Mims. Is there a particular guy in more of the third round area than the second round area that you think is like a full-blown sleeper for rookie drafts?
I like Palmer a lot.
Palmer.
And I like Jaden Reed a lot. Jaden Reed is a guy who played through like a back injury, but man, he's got a pretty intriguing profile.
Yes.
And he's not going to be drafted highly, but he was a true breakout as a freshman at Western Michigan, playing alongside Dwayne Eskridge, who was a second round NFL player. He also had a better freshman year than Sky Moore did at Western Michigan. He transfers. He's another one of these guys. He's got a really robust return profile rate. Like he's a good kick returner. He went to Michigan State, had a really solid year the year before last, played through some back injuries, didn't perform as well. But, he's kind of like if you're looking at just like a prospect comps, he does comp to Stephon Diggs a little bit. He does show up in his comps. And I am fascinated with Puka Nacua, man. I don't know how good an NFL player or fantasy player he'll ever be, but this dude can play, man. Like, he's very intriguing to watch. This dude makes ridiculous catches. They give him handoffs. He gets like all these targets in the backfield, but then also has a high ADOT. So he has a limited profile because of the playing in BYU, but he's the only 3 receivers in this draft class had averaged over 3 yards per route run against man coverage and zone coverage. It was him, Quentin Johnston, and Jalen Hyatt. He was top 6 in yards per route run amongst not just in the draft class, all players the past 2 years. And again, he's not running as many routes as the other guys. But we'll see how his athleticism comes out. He just had his pro day last week. He was 200 pounds. He's 6'2". I don't know how good a fantasy player is, but like I'm fascinated by him. And I like saying his name a lot too. And the last guy I will say that I'm at least holding a candle for to see where he goes in the draft is CJ Johnson from East Carolina. Huge yards after the catch guy. He's big. One of those throwback big dudes, 6'2", 224. His yards after the catch per reception were 9th in this draft class. He led this class with 4.6 yards per route run against man coverage last year in 2022. And 35% of his 35% of his targets came against man coverage, which was the 5th highest rate in this class. He did not work out in Indianapolis. There's some concerns he probably won't run as fast, but I'm at least going to see what he has to put out at his pro day. I think he had his pro day already. It's just hard to find this shit now. How are we still in 2023 and we don't have accurate pro day results? But I can watch 7 TikTok videos.
It takes forever for the pro day results to come in, and we are trying our best to expedite that. I can promise you, we're trying, but getting they're tough. Puka Nacua is not athletic enough, so I can't advocate for a BYU wide receiver with a weak athletic profile, no matter how fun his production was, I just can't do it. So that's my take on Puka Nacua. Just a quick
He's
take.
hashtag good at the game, though.
Yeah, he's a good football player. I don't think he'll be a
He's
great
probably
pro.
never going to be a good fantasy player, though.
No, I don't think he's going to move the needle for fantasy, unfortunately. But I do appreciate him as a football player. Absolutely. He was good at the Senior Bowl, but you know who was better at the Senior Bowl? Jaden Reed.
Yeah, Jaden Reed is definitely
Jaden Reed.
I feel like he's like every analyst
on
Jaden
Reed and Trey Palmer in a big, big way. Absolutely. Now, we're going to go rapid fire. 10 burning questions. 10 burning questions, rapid fire.
I wanted to talk about Abanaconda with you because that's the Kelly football player all the way. Because you know who my number one comp for him is? And it's a guy you liked. And I don't think you were wrong about him.
We're going to talk about Abanaconda. It'll be the first burning question I have for you. My burning questions are coming up next. We'll talk Israel Abanaconda. Hey, what is the World Series of fantasy or the Super Bowl of fantasy football? And it's easy. It's the FFPC, the Fantasy Football Players Championship. It's a $6 million prize pool. And they've had their Never Too Early Best Ball leagues cranking since February. So the FFPC is the answer to so many questions. Hey, where's the best place to get a Dynasty Orphan? Well, you can adopt a Dynasty Orphan at the FFPC. That's why we partner with them. If you want to play fantasy football for low, medium, high stakes, seasonal, best ball, dynasty, go to the FFPC. And don't forget, promo code Underworld to get you $25 off your first team. $25 off your first team, no matter what team it is, no matter what format it is, at the FFPC. Go do it. Well, that was good, huh?
That was nice.
Polished, right?
Bro, you're a pro's pro in that department. There's some great orators in our field, but you are among the top.
Thank you. Like Israel Abanaconda.
Yeah, a lot of syllables.
Love it. So sell us on the Kanda.
Well, I'm not going to sell you on him. I just think he's like this is like when I first did like his profile, you were honestly, I swear to God, the first person I thought of.
Yes!
I was like, this is there's no way Matt Kelly's not going to like this guy.
We're very high.
Like 100%.
We
because you know who my number one, you know who my number one comp for him is?
Tevin Coleman.
Yep, 100%. And I know Matt Kelly was a huge Tevin Coleman guy, and I don't think you were wrong. Tevin Coleman was a solid NFL player.
Oh no, I'll go to my grave insisting that Tevin Coleman was a quality prospect.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Yeah, I mean, this guy. If you give this guy a tarmac, like he's gonna score. One of the few backs in this class that like fits that traditional profile. Because we talked about wide receiver weight and guys being lighter, but like what really matters is running backs, right? Like weight at running backs really matters. And maybe we could spin this in a Jamar Gibbs convo too, who may be the most overrated draft pick, I think, in rookie drafts. Because coaches cannot get out of their ways with running backs. Like if you don't fit the profile, like it's hard for you to get like a third down, like a 3-down job in the NFL. But Abacanda's 216 pounds. We don't have a lot of these guys in this class. This, as good as from a talent perspective as running back class is, it's very archetypical. There are a lot of guys that fit roles as running backs. But there aren't a lot of guys that have like size speed profiles that like you can kind of squint and see like if this develops. Where Abacanda has to like prove himself, though he has to prove himself in a couple of directions. One, the next tackle that he forces missed will be his first. Like 100%. This is where the Tevin Coleman comps come from.
It's such a Tevin Coleman feature.
Because if you give this dude a runway, house calls on deck. Like you are getting just 60-yarders, 30-yarders. They're all happening. But if this dude has to make someone miss, or if he has to create yards after contact, not happening. All zone runs. So he's that guy like in the Raheem Mostert role. And there's a lot of schemes in the NFL that have transitioned to this. So that's not going to be a problem going into the NFL. Forced them missed tackle, just 14.5% of his career carries, lowest rate in this draft class. On inside runs, it was even lower. When he actually had to run inside, he created a missed tackle on just 14.3%. Also the lowest rate among all draft classes running backs. When he was hit at or behind the line of scrimmage, just 12.2%, lowest again in this draft class. He's also arguably the worst pass protector in this draft class. He allowed a pressure on 11% of his pass blocking snaps at Pitt, third highest in this draft class. Also, he's the second highest drop rate.
Where's that stat come from?
Sports Info Solutions.
Right. Okay, good.
Yeah, so, I mean, he does have some work, but, like, when you look at a guy you can just hand the football to and just hope create big plays, like, this is the dude. Like, this is the guy. There are a couple, like, smaller guys in this class that also fit that profile that are, like, just, like, fast and jitterbugs, but, like, not the 215-pound guys, right? Like, he's the only guy. Kendre Miller's probably in the mix, too. Like, he's the other guy. Like, he's got just that 1 year production because he needed Zach Evans to transfer and create that, like, opportunity for him. But 5'11", 215, plenty of speed. But he's another guy, too, like, really bad at creating yards after contact, really bad at breaking tackles, like all of those things. And he was also a pretty bad receiver too, over his career. So it takes some squint to see it, but like, I think those two, Abakana and Kendre Miller, are like the two guys that you kind of look for like the upside of getting traditional 3-down roles. You brought up Roschon Johnson. I think he's going to be definitely pigeonholed in like an early down grinder role early in the NFL. But I know the NFL is high on him. It just depends on how much of a passing role we can get him for fantasy football.
Yeah, he could be a second rounder.
Right.
It's crazy.
You just don't want him to turn into what like Jamal Williams was last year, right? Like guess the touchdown type
Well, it wouldn't be that bad. I mean, Jamal Williams is pretty productive.
Well, yeah, but it was all like you can't like Jamal Williams was all touchdown. Look at Jamal Williams' production with and without touchdowns. He was dead. And you can't count on Amon-Ra St. Brown to get tackled at the 1 yard line 8 more times for the team. Rashawn Johnson.
No, I know. I get it. But I mean, trust me, I would be very happy with the Jamal Williams fantasy total for even super volatile week to week for Roschon Johnson as a rookie.
Yeah, it'd probably be a good outcome. But like, those are guys. Outcome. That's a guy I'll never want in fantasy football, though.
No,
never.
But as a rookie, and then he can grow from there. That would be fine.
Oh, if a rookie, if we can get
that's what I'm saying. In his rookie year,
sure.
if we can get the Jamal Williams season from last year as a rookie, that would be great.
Oh yeah, we're not counting on that, but
that's not but I'm just saying that would be just fine. There's other outcomes where it's like, well, I don't know, man. Yeah, it's just David Montgomery. I could think would be a good outcome for him, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I like David Montgomery there too as well. So I mean, you got like all these guys though that could be like, Devin Achane, like, is an NFL team really going to give that dude the necessary touches? Like, because we've seen it at wide receiver, but at running back, it takes you a while to like, and almost necessity. You need multiple injuries to give a 190-pound running back like tangible touches in the NFL. It don't happen. It doesn't happen.
I can't say this on enough podcasts and talk about it enough. Why we don't have Devon Achane in the top 5. We don't. We have guys like Abanikanda, and for upside, I'd rather have Kendre Miller.
Yeah, I mean,
for that reason.
Because a lot of these guys are going to end up in situations where it's a clear committee to start with, just because we talked about the top-down landscape. Not enough jobs for these running backs. But we also know there's going to be injuries in season. It's going to open up opportunities. Like, shit, dude, Zonovan Knight was starting games last year for a point. Like, some of these guys are going to luck box into opportunities. And the guys that are built like actual 200-plus pound running backs that like coaches know that like I can just give this guy carries to, like those are the guys that are going to kind of make their way through that landscape the quickest.
That
like,
is
even
Roschon
a guy like
Johnson.
Even a guy like Achane is going to need so many injuries to get that kind of workload, right? Like, it's just going to take that. And Gibbs is the closest thing like we have to like that like Austin Eckler profile. But look at, it's tried and true what he did in college. He was already a committee player in college in that role. So like, how will we not believe he's going to not be that way in the NFL? the lowest rate in this class of runs on inside carries. They pulled him at the goal line. They pulled him in short yardage. He was one of the worst running backs in this draft class on inside runs. He's one of the worst running backs in this draft class when he gets hit at the line of scrimmage. But you get him out in speed and space, phenomenal. Just absolutely just going to smoke people. He's making people miss. But how are we expecting him to be different what he was at college in the NFL? Like, why are we doing that with Jahmyr Gibbs? Like, he can't be the 102. You can't take him with the second pick. Like, his range of outcomes to maximize that is just too thin. It's too thin for him to be like a real true like weekly fantasy RB1. Just way too thin. Because these types of players don't get that. He has to get drafted with either Christian McCaffrey draft capital or has to go the Eckler route and just be so damn good that they can't help it.
But the Eckler route is so fraught. That's That's why you say it's thin. And we know he's not going to get the McCaffrey top 10 pick treatment.
Right. But I'm saying, like, I think Jahmyr Gibbs is awesome at what he does, but I think a lot of people are putting him in a role in the NFL that he's not going to have. A lot of people think he's going to be Alvin Kamara. Alvin Kamara is 15 pounds heavier when he entered the NFL.
So true.
Like, Alvin Kamara is 215 pounds. Like, coaches have a mental barrier. You look at running back position across the league. Look at what's happening to DeAndre Swift in Detroit. Like, dude, coaches have such a hard time. And coaches have such a hard time giving smaller backs high workloads, especially in today's NFL. It's just too thin. I think Gibbs is an awesome real life NFL player, and he's going to be awesome where he goes. But for fantasy football, his margin to be like that premier running back is just very, very thin and very small, just because he was already so bad at short yardage runs, already so bad at the goal line. Alabama took him out. Alabama was smart enough to recognize, like, he's not good at these things. We're going to remove him from the game in these spots, but we're going to use him in the capacity that he excels at. And I think that's exactly what's going to happen in the NFL. He's probably going to end up being like a floor-based PPR guy, can run into some spike weeks, maybe a spike season if there's some injuries around him. But man, I don't think it's far-fetched to think like Charbonnet could have like a larger fantasy impact than him. Either of the guys we talked about at Banacanda and Kendra Miller, if they luck box into the opportunities of being 3-down players. Even Tyjae Spears has probably a better path to being a 3-down player than him.
What?
Yeah. He's better in all assets of short yardage running. Like, he's been better. It's not even comparable.
Whoa.
On inside runs and short yardage running, Tyjae Spears is one of the best running backs in this class.
Oh, Tyjae Spears is fucking awesome. Yeah.
But I mean, it's interesting. I think that there's a lot of talent in the running back class, but it's, like I said, it's very archetypical. These guys are very good at playing a role in an offense. And we've got one true big dog that's a 3-down guy. And then we've got like kind of Charbonnet, Kendra Miller, Abanikanda, Roshan Johnson. You can see guys that kind of get to that role eventually down the line.
Charbonnet has real potential.
Yeah. But I think Charbonnet, the gap between Charbonnet and Gibbs is closer for fantasy football than probably it's given credit for.
Oh, I agree with you. We have them 2-3, but I think it's close. Let's talk a little bit about, you talk about team needs and these team situations. Let's just run through a few teams that I think are interesting. You ready?
Do it.
We have some burning questions here.
Burning
questions. We can go more on the rapid fire side of speed.
Do my best.
We don't really do rapid fire here. We pretend to do rapid fire, and it's not really rapid fire. And then when you're on the show, it's definitely not rapid fire, but it's very good fire. It's fiery, but not necessarily rapid. I mean, Tyjae Spears to Gibbs, or Tyjae Spears over Gibbs. I mean, that was hot. I love that.
I don't think over him. I just think that he's a better inside runner.
No, in all these areas, you're like, no, in real life football, you're going to give player X an opportunity. All else equal in a lot of game situations, I'm going to give it to freaking Tyjae Spears over Gibbs, and that is a statement, because Gibbs is being drafted like he's going to be Kamara.
Yeah, and I think that's and Kamara from a fantasy football stance, and Eckler even, were supremely discounted.
Well, Eckler for sure.
Well, I mean, even Kamara was from in rookie drafts where you got him. It's
The
one thing to
110
end
I
up.
drafted. I remember exactly where I drafted him. The 110.
It's one thing to get those guys with a lower draft pick, but like, and maybe when the post draft Gibbs will settle in at maybe like the 107, right? And then it's moot. We don't have to have this conversation, but like people are handling him as like the locked in, like almost like 102 in one quarterback leagues, which seemed absolutely crazy.
I'd rather have Jackson Smith and Jigba, I can tell you that.
Oh, 3,000%.
I mean, come on now.
Yeah.
The Broncos and Russell Wilson bouncing back.
Let's ride.
That's happening, right? I mean, it's just a massive outlier season and all these coach narratives and new team, new circumstance, push-ups on the plane, just noise. Right?
Again,
just
this
noise.
is from a regression stance, it has to happen. I mean, only the Jets, Texans, and Colts scored a touchdown at a lower rate per drive than the Broncos last year. There's only one way to go up.
Bad luck.
Here's my thing with my one concern, because I think that there's talent here, and obviously we have a little bit of coach faith for two people that don't really have a lot of coach faith. But we need Russell Wilson, and I don't know if he's capable of doing this. This is why I have the slight trepidation. Is Russell Wilson has to be a different quarterback than he was when he was younger. And because what happened in Denver is we saw the same Russell Wilson shit. And it was cool because the NFL was different when he was younger and he was more athletic and you can get away with a lot of this stuff. But like it became the same old-fashioned Russell Wilson offense last year. Second in the NFL in deep ball rate, 27th in throw rate between the numbers, 26th in short throw rate. The dude is playing in a different era of football. Like he plays a different style of game that just isn't really working in today's NFL. The low percentage types of throws and the low percentage plays, that's not the way teams play defense anymore in the NFL. Like I talked about it, man coverage, 24.7% of the time last season. NFL teams blitz just 25% of the time last year. Teams want to prevent big plays. They want to make you beat them by being efficient. And Russell Wilson has kind of swerved into playing into defensive hands the past 2 years of him playing football. He's been a really inefficient quarterback because he doesn't take enough free plays. He needs to get the ball out of his hands, get completions, not just he's not trophy hunt. Russell Wilson was a great trophy hunter quarterback for his career. Sean Payton needs to get this out of him. He needs a transition. And so like it's on Russell Wilson. It's not on Sean Payton to say like Russ, like I haven't called this stuff around you. Like he needs Russell Wilson to adjust to the way the NFL is played right now. And his best players are probably Tim Patrick and Jerry Jeudy, who kind of excel in that area, where Cortland Sutton was probably always kind of a fugazi wide receiver. And where he earns targets is just not successful either. So, I mean, we need Russell Wilson to adapt and change his game. And can a quarterback at his age do it? That's where I have my questions.
These are legitimate questions. I don't have the answers either. It sounds like you believe that Carolina is not a sneaky source of fantasy value this year, even if they go with Stroud.
No, not in 2023. Because when we don't like quarterbacks or fantasy players attached to rookie quarterbacks, look at it at all three positions. These guys typically don't perform well. Also, I mean, Adam Thielen is dust. Like it's as dusty as you can get. We know what DJ Shark is. We just need more talent there. It's a great offensive line. They signed Miles Sanders, and they've got an awesome young defense. That does not scream, we're going to wing it around the yard.
No, that's everything you said is bad for fantasy. It may be okay for Miles Sanders.
I could see Carolina being a really good real team, though. Like I could see Carolina,
I could see that they
should
should win the division, shouldn't they?
Even with Stroud, like competing to win the division, because the defense is young and gnarly. They got a nice defense. The offensive line
path to win the division.
Good.
Yeah.
Yep, offensive line is good. They just get functional quarterback play that doesn't lose them games. They're in a good spot because they're going to run the football, play defense. Maybe 2024 we revisit that.
Maybe 2020. Now, the Vikings are pass first. Vikings are an exciting offense. Justin Jefferson is the locked-in 101. He's the consensus. The number 2 receiver there is very interesting. His name's T.J. Hawkinson. I've never seen a tight end steamed up like T.J. Hawkinson with such underwhelming peripheral metrics, but it's almost purely situation based, but it's just the perfect storm in that, yes, it's the perfect situation, but you've got a young tight end that was a top 10 pick that does athletically compare to guys like George Kittle. It's just he's never actually done it on the field. So there's enough there. There's enough there with TJ Hawkinson to really inspire people, especially in tight end premium. Do you have a take on that?
I have so many takes on the Vikings. So let's take a 10,000-foot view, and I'll try to hone in on Hawkinson as I get there. What happened with the 2022 Minnesota Vikings season was such a conglomeration of unique events that we just may never see again for an NFL team. If you played DFS, you were definitely in this. The Vikings were third in the NFL in dropbacks, and this is not coaching change induced. So, especially towards the back half of the season, week 11 on through the playoffs, the offensive line died halfway through the season. Not even halfway, week 11 it died. So from top-down view, Christian Darrisaw, Garrett Bradbury, and Brian O'Neill only played 48% of the offensive snaps together. They played just 17 total snaps over the final 9 games the Vikings played last year. 17 snaps had all 3 of those guys on the field. So what happened when those guys could not play? The Vikings absolutely could not run the football on any level.
Well, when Darrisaw was out, they were a totally different team.
So look at Dalvin Cook, and I don't know if he'll be a Viking. But Dalvin Cook last year on carries, he had 146 carries with all 3 of those linemen on the field. On those carries, 5.1 yards per carry, 38.4% success rate, 13% of his runs went for 10 or more yards, 19.2% failed to gain yardage. From week 11 on, he had just 8 carries with those guys on the field. On his carries, without those guys on the field, everything absolutely died. 3.8 yards per carry. He was 43rd in EPA per rush, 30.6% success rate, 8.2% of his carries went for 10 or more yards, 24.5% failed to gain yardage. So they couldn't run the football. Then, on top of that, their entire defense died. They couldn't run the football, and they couldn't stop anybody. If you played DFS over the back half of last season, you knew damn well you were starting with Justin Jefferson if you could afford and then running back with the opposition stack if you could afford it due to Jefferson's price. Every single week, this was tried and true. Justin Jefferson ran the most pass routes in the NFL because of all of these things that happened. Now, we know what we're doing with Justin Jefferson. Adam Thielen was second in the NFL in pass routes run last year. This is how we know he's extra dust, by the way, of him going to Carolina.
Oh, he's the dustiest of the dusty.
So when the Minnesota Vikings acquired TJ Hawkinson in week 9, Hawkinson, of course, rest of the season, great, right? Second, only Travis Kelce had more targets, catches, and receiving yards than Hawkinson. But TJ Hawkinson ran the most pass routes of any tight end in the NFL over that span. He was 15th in yards per route run. He ran 37 pass routes per game over that span. Like I said, he was 15th in yards per route run. His yards per catch and his yards per target with the Vikings were by far the lowest they were at any point of his career. So he lived in this situation of not having a true wide receiver two, the Vikings not being able to run the ball, and the Vikings not being able to stop anybody, created just this incredible storm for him to get all of this volume. Here's the kicker about it. Over that span with the Vikings, TJ Hawkinson only had 3 top 6 scoring weeks and only 1 above tight end 5. He lived as a floor player on all that volume in fantasy football. What happens if that value, all of those things are fragile, right? What if the Vikings do run the football better? Their offensive line stays healthier. What if the defense is better than it was last year? They already have a whole new secondary. All of these things are inflection points to pull away from that volume that he had. What if the Vikings draft a wide receiver in the first round? All of those things can pull around. For a player that hasn't really shown us on his own, he is that effective, right? Like he's that much of a fantasy appeal. Because I'll give you try true. There aren't a lot of cheat codes in fantasy football, but I can tell you right now, you never draft situation first at the front of premium capital. As good as his situation looks right now, you always draft talent at the front, and then you fold situation in, but you never start with situation in the first. He's a 3rd round pick now. He's at the 2-3 turn in FFPC. You never start with situation. You never start with situation because you will get burned time and time again because we're bad at analyzing these situations and predicting them. But we are generally good at knowing the players that have been good at football and are good football players. So start with good football players first. I don't think TJ Hawkinson is some bum, but I think he's definitely overvalued in fantasy football drafts because it's just too fragile. And even while he had all those numbers, he wasn't even cooking in fantasy. He was a floor player at tight end. Like,
well, he did have 2 35-point weeks.
He had one 35-point week.
And he had a 40-point week in Detroit.
Well, he had the 40-point week in Detroit again when no one played.
Right, but that week in Detroit, I believe Amon-Ra St. Brown was out.
Yes, everyone is out. So I mean, it's tough, man. I mean, he's I think he's a very solid tight end, but this is like you can't take him, especially the position he plays, tight end. I know he's getting FFPC juice here, elevation in this context, but there are a lot of guys. Like, what's the true difference between like him and some guys that are going to go later, right? Like at the tight end position, like a lot of these guys can luck box into volume.
I have been pushing back on the TJ Hawkinson hype that is surrounding me. I feel like I am Atlas, right? Holding up the weight of TJ Hawkinson realism. There are people at this company that believe that we're too low on TJ Hawkinson. And in our dynasty rankings, he is tight end 4. And I don't see a world where he's higher than that, barring a Travis Kelce injury.
And some of these rookies could even flag him down in a year or two. For sure.
Dallas Goedert could flag him down. Pat Fryermuth could flag him down. Greg Dulcich could flag him down. It's not like he's done anything in the efficiency column that is going to put him in a place where he is, an untouchable asset, unlike George Kittle. George Kittle is 3.5 years older. He's well past the tight end age apex. Hawkinson's in front of the tight end age apex.
Yeah, we're lacking young, good tight ends for sure.
But they are the same value in Dynasty. I'm not paying any more for Hawkinson than I would Kittle, despite the age gap, because Kittle has the thing that Hawkinson does not, which he is proven to be truly special and a difference maker. And when things break his way, as things broke Hawkinson's way last year, he'd put up double the sort of top 5 performances that Hawkinson did.
Yeah, last year was the grocery lane to buy Hawkinson and play on those things happening, right? But now, because he had that season, he's going to move up, and there'll be some other guys replaced there. But especially at tight end, you've got so many similar assets that could run into that value and run into that season. But because remember, 2 years ago, Hawkinson got the steam for that, and I think he moved up to tight end 3 that year after Waller. It was like, Hawkinson and Kittle were in that range, and he disappointed, so he fell back down last year. You get the dip. We're doing the same thing, right? We're just following the market. We're going to get
another
off
player that I have been sort of holding back the enthusiasm on. I've been actively suppressing the hype machine internally is Ramondre Stevenson. And here come the Patriots saying they're looking at running backs in the draft, and it doesn't make any sense. They already they have Stevenson already, right? They have Kevin Harris, they have Pierre Strong, they have these guys they've drafted. They signed James Robinson. They don't need a running back. They're set at running back, unless they don't believe that Ramondre Stevenson is really like their 3-down answer longer term.
I mean, imagine the Patriots in their current state of an organization drafting another running back, because they've taken one, I think, in 4 of the past 5 drafts.
Oh, they will. Oh, they will.
I know.
Belichick is driving this thing right into the ground. You do know that. They are going to finish last in the division, and he's driving it into the ground.
His twilight is not going well.
It's not going well. And of all their needs, they're going to go running back. I mean, I'm not, like I said, I'm not some Ramondre Stevenson zealot by any means, right? I am a very cautious valuator of Ramondre Stevenson, and yet I'm like, Patriots, you're good at running back. Can you please focus elsewhere? Jesus.
Yeah, and Ramondre, even if they don't draft a running back, people will still always have that one half foot out, right? Because they'll say Patriots running back that high. No way, Lucy. They're trying
Yeah,
to
but
kick
I
that
mean,
football.
it's not about the team situation. It's not about the narrative around you can't trust running backs or wide receivers from Team X. It's just that he's not explosive enough, and he hasn't proven that. Especially given that team situation and his age, that you're going to get what you want out of him. This is a bad offense, right? There's also this still lingering Tom Brady-based perception that the Patriots offense is at least going to be average, right? Just like you talked about with the Steelers defense, right? There's this lingering perception that we've been indoctrinated into. Hey, there's a baseline floor for the Steelers defense. There's a baseline floor for the Patriots offense. That's my bigger fear, right? Yes, Ramondre Stevenson is not the explosive big play back that he's been sold to be, because I think he's had some fortunate outcomes with breakaway runs, and that's fine. But the larger problem are the touchdowns and the volume from this offense, and they are going to absolutely try to ramp up Pierre Strong like they did with Shane Vereen. That's all, and then you have this probability that they go running back in round 3 or something insane. All I know is that Bill Belichick is going to do insane things in this draft, and it has to terrify you if you have Ramondre Stevenson. I don't think Ramondre Stevenson is very good. Ramondre Stevenson is the first running back since Corey Dillon to command a true workhorse role in all phases in New England. We're talking about 20 years. He's a once every 20-year running back. He's good. But
yeah, they should roll with him. Honestly,
they should roll with him. But for fantasy football, he's not someone that I feel good about.
Oh, you can't, obviously, for the reasons we talked about. Also, for the life of me, I cannot figure out last year why they didn't even look at Pierre Strong. He got to play one game when Stevenson left. I think it was against Arizona on Monday night, and he was awesome. And then just was immediately ghosted again. I don't know why they didn't.
But the rookies are like this, though.
Yep.
Some of these teams, especially the older coaches, they don't want to give the rookies looks in practice and in training camp.
But they did the year before. They did it with Stevenson. I
don't know why, but typically they don't.
Yeah.
Something else. So I understand it, but I'm looking forward to Strong and Harris coming in as veterans this year and getting real looks in training camp, and Strong especially because of his pass catching ability, and that he fits that specialist role that the Patriots typically like to have with a James White or Dion Lewis or whoever it is, that you could absolutely see Pierre Strong filling that need, coming in and pressing in camp, and then all of a sudden, a lot of those targets we were penciling in for Stevenson are vaporized. So there's a lot of risk there.
Yeah, there's no reason for Ramondre to lead the team in receptions again.
No, it doesn't make sense. That's not him. That's okay.
Offense is going to be good that way either.
Yeah, and it's not a good offense. And now they're talking about potentially going to Zappy. That is Mac Jones on the block. Now, what are you doing? What do you think that Mac Jones is overrated, or do you think that there's something like clinically wrong with New England?
I think there's a push and pull for both. I'll say this. Mac Jones was really good 2 years ago for the type of passer he is. I think that his archetype of passer is very tough to win with in today's NFL. Your margins for error are very small. I think that what happened with the Patriots from an organizational stance, the gusto, the fucking brazier attitude to come into a season without an offensive coordinator and to let Matt Patricia and Joe Judge run this ship, there was no way that was going to work. So we're now in year 3 of Mac Jones. He's going to be his 3rd offensive coordinator in 3 years. But at least it's not Matt Patricia and Joe Judge.
Well, there's a reason why Belichick and Shanahan get along so well.
Yep.
There's a reason why. I mean,
My
in the
goodness,
chat,
dude.
I mean, you can all let me know in the chat. Am I crazy? Are Rich and I insane for calling out Kyle Shanahan's ego? Because it's the you pull on the thread to understand what's wrong with some of these franchises and why they don't actually get the most out of the personnel that they have. A lot of times it goes back to the ego and the hubris of the top equity holders, the general manager, the coach. And in New England, it's just so obvious what's going on. They're not even trying to hide it with this Matt Patricia thing last year. They're not even trying to hide it.
I mean, unbelievable that happened. That it was allowed to happen on anyone's watch. That was allowed to happen.
It was just so brazen. And you're sitting here. I'm a Patriots fan, and I'm like, well, this is just. And I don't know what's happening. I'm like, was Tom Brady just wallpapering over all these flaws of Belichick, and Belichick was just riding on Brady's greatness the whole time? Or is Belichick tilting post-Brady? Is Belichick just 70 years old and he's past his prime? All of the above, probably. Ugh. Oof. Speaking of Brady, the Bucs. If you're the Buccaneers, what would you do this offseason? How would you be approaching this offseason if you are the Buccaneers? Because they're in a very difficult situation post-Brady. But I think, to me, it's a great opportunity for people like you and me to iterate on what if. What would you do if you were in that chair, rebuilding that team?
I mean, they've still got a lot of guys, a lot of assets they can move out of there. You got to scorch the earth, though. I think you got to start, too, with the head coach. Todd Bowles is not the guy you want in transition of this thing. You need forward thinking. You need forward thinkers, I think, at this stage of what the Bucs are going to put on the field, one, this season and moving forward for probably the next couple seasons. I think having a young team that's going to be kind of 1 foot in, 1 foot out, Todd Bowles is not the guy that's going to maximize that. They've got a lot of issues. Ironically, a lot of their issues have come up defensively too. Like they've been really bad at getting after the pass rusher, or getting better. They've been really bad getting after the quarterback the past 2 years since they winning that Super Bowl. It's declined. Their pass rushers have really fallen off. You've got one window to trade Mike Evans, I think. At post June 1, he probably won't get traded, but post June 1, he should be traded. You got to get out, man. You got to get out. This is a guy that's going to be 30, may not be a guy that ages gracefully because of the archetype he is. He's not, again, we talked about, like, you're not winning over the top in the NFL often anymore. It's a lot harder. So a guy like Mike Evans, I don't think at his age, just like it's a coincidence that like what his performance was last year was what it was. So you got to move him. You can hold Godwin, I think, for maybe a year or two, but I would probably I'd scorch the earth out of this, though. I would absolutely scorch the earth out of this.
Oh, yeah. But Mike Evans is the easy one.
Yeah. You got to get out of there, though. I don't know. This might be a great spot for Hendon Hooker, right? Like, this might be the Hendon Hooker spot where you can take a shot. And because you just let him play and maybe the team environment's going to be too shitty and it won't help him. But, like, this is a spot where if, like, you hit, then you've got a cheap contractual quarterback. That's why they should just let Trask play instead of Baker, too. Just let Trask play because he's on his rookie contract for 2 more years.
They can. Apparently, Trask is not interested.
Yeah, he's just that bad.
Football.
I mean, we know he's that bad, but
he's bad. But I think also he lacks any sort of passion for the sport. He's checking in late, leaving early. Right, he's not putting the time in that he needs. So that those guys always wash out, even if they're good.
Dunzo.
They're dunzo. If you're going to be a day 2 quarterback, you got to come in and be the most passionate guy ever about the sport. And if you're not that, you're fried.
Let me ask what you do if you're the Bucs. Here's a real decision you might have to make if you're the Bucs, and they're going to keep this player. What do you do at Tristan Wirfs? You're obviously picking up his 5th-year option.
Ooh.
But he can net you legit equity.
Yeah, this could be a Laramie Tunsil deal. They could pull a Laramie Tunsil deal and get 2 firsts for him.
Like, he can get you actual return. Because Mike Evans ain't getting you shit. Like, he's going to get you a mid-round pick. Maybe Godwin nets you a little bit more than that. But, like, Tristan Wirfs you can trade for actual multiple first-round picks.
Yes. Yep, I think you scorch the whole earth and nothing but the earth. All of it. Burn it all down. You have to. Except the
There's
running
no
back.
way. And
The one
listen, just like the
position you're not,
Rams,
just like with the Bijan Robinson, this is where real football and fantasy football parallel perfectly. That the one position you're not going to worry about is running back. You're going to let Rachaad White go put up 250 carries. The last position you're going to be filling at all. You can run with Rachaad White and Keyshawn Vaughn. Who cares?
but that's not going to happen because they're not going to do all these things.
No, but they're not going to do any of what we said.
No, none of these things, man. None of these.
Mike
things.
Evans could get traded. That's just the logic behind it is so sound.
Yeah, they have to do it post June 1 though. It has to be. He has to be a post June 1.
Of course, but yes, that makes it economically makes so much sense.
Yeah.
All right, another burning question for you. Kellen Moore departs from Dallas. They will likely be a little more run heavy. They may even draft Bijan Robinson, which would be something. Brandon Cooks comes in though. It's like, well, maybe they will open this thing up. It's confusing. It's hard to project exactly what direction they're going to go because at least if they had Kellen Moore, we would know, okay, this is going to be a pass-first offense. How do you perceive the Moore departure versus the arrival of Cooks?
Yeah, it's tough to say about Kellen Moore to have like a true opinion on how much that's going to impact things. He was a guy like I don't think that oscillated more. Like there's another coordinator that oscillated more between like absolute genius and donkey than Kellen Moore. Sometimes he would just be in his bag, and then sometimes you'd be like, "What the hell are we doing here?" But what we do like from the top-down stance of the Cowboys, though, are a few things. They got rid of the two players that were dragging this offense down: Dalton Schultz and Ezekiel Elliott. We're removing significant touches from players that were sinking this ship. They were
sinking the ship like how? Like catching the ball on the sideline, then refusing to get upfield.
Well, that was one.
Not allowing the clock to stop like that,
dude.
Or not dragging your foot when you go out of bounds to lock in the reception.
Well, I mean, listen,
in consecutive plays in a must-win game in a clutch situation.
Yeah, those both happened as well. But I mean, Dalton Schultz is the ultimate ham and egg. This is why we were off him last year. Like we talk about if you have to start the conversation for a player in fantasy football about his situation first, you're already wrong. You're already wrong. Eject. Like that's all icing. It's all icing. Like situation comes into play afterwards. But if you start with situation before the player, bad news. You're gonna be bad at playing this game. Dalton Schultz, ham and egger. He's good. If you give him a lot of targets, he'll catch some baseline stuff, not really do anything exciting. Zeke was listen, I loved Zeke as a prospect, as a young player. Just didn't have the juice, man. Just didn't have the juice. All the touches he got weren't good in the offense last year. So you remove those, and we're going to replace them with at least one player we know that has some upside in Brandon Cooks. We'll see what we replace the other touches with. But right now, they're going to Tony Pollard, which we like. Mm-hmm. I'd imagine this is a spot that because they shouldn't draft Bijan. We know that. But this is a spot I think that they should just this is where you can just sign Kareem Hunt, right? And just whatever.
You think Hunt's less dusty than Zeke, right?
Nah, they're both a little bit marginal, but they should just draft.
Okay, what about Fournette? Fournette less dusty than both?
No. Just you don't want any of these guys. This is where you draft Roschon Johnson, right?
Oh yes, that's perfect.
Because Tony Pollard is he's still not a guy we want to give 300 touches to, right?
No. This is exactly what we talked about. Where if he's gonna get between the tackles, carries, if he's going to be Jamal Williams as a rookie, let it be done in That's perfect.
Yeah. So Dallas is probably the most perfect spot for Roschon, actually, I think about it.
Yeah. And we know that they know that he's good, which is that's exciting. Now, what about Jamal
Dak's going to be a value, by the way. Dak
is going to be incredible this year.
Yeah. People think
how is this not obvious when they brought in Cooks? I mean, it was such a giveaway when they brought in Cooks. I was feeling this way before Cooks came in. Then I'm like, oh, well, now Cooks is here. The secret's out on Dak. Not so fast. Somehow the lack of appreciation of Dak spans the traditional sports fan and fantasy gamers.
It does, man. It's bled into everything. People legitimately hate this dude.
It's so weird. I love him.
Yeah,
I love him. We've always been bullish on him, especially in Dynasty.
Two of the weirdest things I think that happened last year in real NFL football was that we were having conversations that Justin Herbert and Dak Prescott weren't top 20 players on the earth at their position. Like, I don't know how we somehow got to like that point last year, but
Oh,
absolutely asinine
pathetic.
dichotomy that was happening last year.
Pathetic. Now, on the flip side, the Jets think that Aaron Rodgers is the answer. Is their offense now a trap with Aaron Rodgers?
No, because the age spec. Well, one we talked about earlier when we brought the Broncos, just how bad they were at scoring points. That's going to rise. We've also seen a little bit of inkling of like the how good it can be when just Zach Wilson isn't as bad and you get something baseline. We're buying Garrett Wilson. We're buying Breece Hall for sure.
Oh yeah, Brees
They've
Hall.
got they've just got enough talent there, and like Rodgers isn't going to. The negative plays still don't happen with Rodgers, right? So like you're going to have that. Like he's going to put the team in scoring position a lot, or not in negative spots as often
He just
as
plays so
they were.
slow.
He ignored. Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's the trap element. But like, you don't care about the other guys, right? Like, we only care about Garrett Wilson and Brees Hall. Like, Alan Lazard's going to be a wide receiver 5. Corey Davis is, if he's still on the team, is going to be in that area too. Like, we're not drafting any of the tight ends. We don't care about anyone else. But we know we want Garrett Wilson. We know we want Brees Hall.
Are we sure on Wilson? Are we sure that he and Rodgers are going to mind meld? Rodgers doesn't seem like an easy
good, though,
person
man.
to get aligned with.
He's so good though. I'm just going to bet on Garrett Wilson's talent
Okay.
at this
Yeah.
point.
All right. Good.
Playing
Good.
with a real quarterback.
That's all I need.
But I will say this, he's going to be expensive because of it. So I can totally get like seeing where he falls, like if you have decisions to make on Garrett Wilson versus
I'm not instantly drafting him, at ADP for sure. Yeah,
who's he going next to right now?
He's
because obviously the assumption is that they're just going to
underdog best ball. I think we're talking about 202, 203.
That's pretty rich.
It's very expensive.
That's pretty rich.
It's very expensive. And the uncertainty of a new quarterback, especially one that plays slow and just Aaron Rodgers asks a lot of his wide receivers and requires significant precision from them that I question whether that's what Garrett Wilson is. If it were Chris Olave, I'd have no issues. Chris Olave would fit hand in glove with whatever quarterback, especially those that require precision. Garrett Wilson is an incredible improvisational wide receiver. He was able to even have some big weeks with some really bad quarterbacks like Mike White, right? Or even Zach Wilson, he put up some weeks. So
true story.
You think by that logic, you put Aaron Rodgers in there, boom. That's why currently at the FFPC, which is tight end premium, he's the 17th pick. Non-tight end premium, he's the 14th pick on places like Underdog.
Yeah, 14 is probably too much because that reminds me. You know what that reminds me of? CeeDee Lamb year 2.
It feels expensive. It feels like CeeDee Lamb year 2.
It feels a lot like a very similar situation to CeeDee Lamb.
I can't do it. I just can't do it. I would much prefer there to be a stable situation or it to be Hall of Fame level guy Devontae Adams getting a new quarterback. Well, okay. I'll take him in the late first every time. No problem. There's not enough resume there for Garrett Wilson to then create the comfort zone necessary to push the button at the 202.
I have a team. I actually traded both Olave and Garrett Wilson this offseason. I had both. I traded them both.
In one trade?
No, 2 different trades.
What did you get back?
I traded Olave, the 110, and a 2024 first. And this is a team that was second last year for Justin Jefferson.
Oh, my God.
And then I traded Garrett Wilson for Deshaun Watson in a Superflex league.
So you're in on the Browns. So you do think that the AFC North could be a shootout division as long as the weather cooperates.
Yeah, I mean, I'm in on the Brown side things. The Deshaun Watson thing could bite me. That could look like a horrific trade. But my only other quarterback, and this is a team that finished second, had Justin Herbert. I had a lot of guys like lose theing jobs and stuff. I was hodgepodging QB2.
Oh, you were very high on Herbert.
Yeah,
when he came
out. And so I've got Herbert and Deshaun Watson now, and then my receivers are just absolutely stacked. So I felt like I was going to go for it. So all those trades could look bad. Trading both those guys could look bad, but we go for things.
Are we totally in on the Lions this year? The Lions, are
But
they
let's talk about the Browns for a second, for real quick.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Oh, apologies. Let's dig into the Browns. Yes, of course.
So the Browns, I think, are pretty undervalued. Amari Cooper was undervalued last year. I doubt that slips through again. But with Deshaun,
you want to check? You want to check?
He probably is still undervalued. You're right. He's probably perennially going to be. He's the new Brandon. Is he new Brandon Cooks?
You could always stack Amari Cooper and Dak Prescott at value. They might not be on the same team anymore, but it's still a value. He's going in the 4th round. Amari Cooper, 4th rounder. So he's definitely more expensive this year. But it is an incredible situation. He's going to have quarterback stability. They're going to open up this offense, and they're in the shootout AFC North.
Well, Watson's a guy I think that's going to climb over the summer. I think that's why it's important to draft him now, because I think when when we bring back all the public and the ghouls and all the analysis is being done, I think Watson's going to rise because he fits that archetype of guys that you want to take a shot on past that firewall. So I think he's only going to climb. He basically,
I don't make facts on Amari Cooper.
What's that?
Can I give you some fun facts on Amari Cooper?
Give me the fun facts.
2022, he set massive career record in air yards, more than 200 additional air yards in his previous high season, and he also set his career high in touchdowns.
Yeah, career in touchdowns. He had a second highest yards per catch rate. He was second in the NFL behind only Jalen Waddle in percent of receptions to go for a first down or touchdown.
Scott Fishbowl.
Yeah, he also still maybe doesn't have target competition, so still looks pretty good. We'll see, but the Browns definitely want to get more aggressive though.
Elijah Moore has a great college profile, had an impressive efficiency metrics in year 1, but he did wash out, and a team gave up on him very recently, and that's always a massive, glaring red flag of all red flags. And then you have Donovan Peoples-Jones, who we know what he is. He's DJ Chark 2.0. Yep. And that's great. That's great for real NFL teams. It's phenomenal for Deshaun Watson, but it's not really a threat to Amari Cooper. So things are lining up for Cooper. He is the smash in the 4th round.
Yeah, and the Browns gave us some signal, and obviously when you pay a guy like Deshaun Watson, you know that you're going to make changes to your system, but they used 11 personnel on 70.9% of their passing plays in 2022. Now, that was still only good for 20th in the NFL, but the previous years under Kevin Stefanski, it was 53.4% and 45.4%, 29th and 31st. When Deshaun Watson was outside of Jacoby Brissett, they used 11 personnel on 76.8% of their passing plays. So they want to open some things up. One Brown that I think that isn't getting talked about as being kind of an obvious value this year is Nick Chubb, especially in these underdog drafts where you can start receiver, Nick Chubb. I mean, Nick Chubb actually, I don't think people realized he was kind of a workhorse last year, and the depth chart is not very good this year. Obviously, Kareem Hunt's gone. You're counting on Jerome Ford, who didn't play an offensive snap last year. Also,
I am, by the way. I like Jerome Ford.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, he's going to be like a hot, zero RB guy. But
not yet.
Don't discount the Cleveland Browns' use of 11 personnel and the impact it's had on Nick Chubb and can have going forward. Nick Chubb was 4th in the NFL last year in rushing attempts with 3 or more wide receivers on the field. He had 156 carries with 3 or more wide receivers on the field. It was the most of his career. The previous years at Kevin Stefanski, 74 and 88. His light box rate last year was the lowest of his career. 21.5% of his runs came against light boxes. 13.6% the year prior, 11.8% the year prior than that. 8-man plus boxes, lowest rate of his career. This is a guy that if you give him behind this offensive line an opportunity to run with more space, and we have an opportunity where he has a higher workload than maybe ever in his career. He may even catches more passes than ever in his career this year. Like in a Josh Jacobs fashion from a couple years ago.
Yes.
I mean, Nick Chubb looks like an auto smash in the 3rd round to me. Like absolutely auto smash.
How is he available in the 3rd round? I don't even understand it. Kareem Hunt's gone, by the way. Guys, Kareem Hunt's gone. He's not, by the way, on Underdog in FFPC. He's now in the 2nd round.
He's now in the 2nd, because you can start elite wide receiver Nick Chubb, and to me that is absolutely.
But you know where Jerome Ford's going?
Well, you draft Jerome Ford still.
Pick 170. He's not the zero RB like it running back that you might think he is. No one's drafting this guy. He's an end of the draft guy still. He hasn't caught zero RB heat yet.
Well, if you're drafting an underdog or FFPC right now, make sure to draft Jerome Ford.
Jerome Ford all day. All day, Jerome Ford.
Yeah, I mean, but especially in these best ball drafts too, where it's like it's supremely tied to like what Nick Chubb does better as a fantasy football player. Man, like you should be thrilled to get him at that point. Because we've got a guy that's already the only player in NFL history to average over 5 yards per carry in all 5 of his NFL seasons in the league, start the league. And we're getting a chance for him to run out of with more space. The offensive line's still good and locked up. I mean, man, yeah. We just need Watson to play better than he did last year because he was absolutely
there's going to be more red zone opportunities. That's my most exciting thing about Chubb is the red zone opportunities. Yes, the efficiency, it's going to go up a little bit. He'll probably have, a few extra breakaway runs and everything, but we're talking about touchdowns, man. We're talking about touchdowns. He had 13 touchdowns last year. He could put up 15-plus touchdowns very easily. And he had a 36-catch season in 2019. He could put up 50 catches.
I mean, realistically, if we just get 40, if we just gets to 40, like
40 catches,
massive,
and 15 touchdowns is not necessarily probable, but very realistic. Very, very realistic. My God, man. My God. He was RB6 last year, and he wasn't even that sexy.
No, I mean, he's got a pretty tasty layout, like I said, especially,
Ooh, yeah.
We want to get those runs at 11 personnel, man.
And he's 27. He doesn't have as much wear on the tire as guys like Elliott and Fournette had. Right? He had.
Have you looked at the Browns contracts? Browns very low key, kind of sharp at giving out contracts. Look at when Amari's contract extension ends. Look at when Nick Chubb's ends. Look at when Deshaun Watson's ends. They all are at that age 30 firewall, right? They're all like at that firewall. Like they're not signing these guys. They're not signing these guys into long-term contracts in their 30s.
Before last year, Chubb hadn't had a season with 300 or more carries. He had 2 seasons with less than 200.
Yeah, I think because a lot of people thought that he still split work with Kareem Hunt last year, and like Kareem Hunt got phased out as the season went on
because he wasn't as effective. Absolutely,
and they still didn't give the depth any carries. Like Dearness Johnson wasn't getting carries. No. So like, man, you just make the offense better in year 2 if Watson can just be better. Offensive line will be healthier this year too. They were banged up. I mean, man. Because especially with the way people are going to draft this year, the top of the running back position is tough to navigate this year.
Browns. So we just need some nominal improvement from Pickett, and it's
still going to push the Steelers thing.
I'm pushing. I have an agenda. You saw the show sheet. I'm pushing that. It's the AFC North is the shootout division. As long as we get the meteorologists to cooperate, as long as we don't get 3 home games in Cleveland.
It's happened like 3 years in a row. They've played like
that are just taken out by 30-mile-an-hour winds and hailstones raining down. As long as like Moses doesn't curse the city.
That game they played the Saints last year might have set football back like 30 years.
It was awful. But it's not necessarily inevitable that they have any more than one really bad weather game. It's very possible because some of these games where it's snowing, as long as the wind isn't like 30, 40 mile an hour gusts, then they can put up points. Like there was literally a perfect storm. Last year, Buffalo didn't have that issue. The way the schedule and the weather actually clicked in and played out for Buffalo, they didn't have the same problems with weather last year. There's a real possibility that the AFC North is the best place to find fantasy points and value.
Yeah, I think we'll see those guys climb a little bit. Get those guys now. Draft them.
Yeah. And again, so it's all the things you talked about, plus I'm saying there's going to be a lot more shootouts in the AFC North than we're accustomed to. I'm just telling you. I'm telling you. I'm
Lock
telling
it. Put
you.
it in.
I'm telling you. I'm telling you.
I want to believe with you. It's good for everyone if it
It
happens.
is. It is. It's great because it's only interesting because it's been known as a defensive division where fantasy points go to die, right? Not so much the case. Not so much, and it's been incremental, right? We got the Lamar Jackson MVP season, then we have Burrow. Now, if we can get all 4 of these teams opening it up, and it's predicated on the Steelers, especially their defense being, league bottom, that would be helpful to all of this. If all these pieces can play out, it can be just shootouts every week. It's going to be a DFS haven, the AFC North. I'm sticking by that, man. And now that you're so bullish on the Browns, you're only strengthening my hand.
I mean, I'm bullish on their guys at cost for sure. We'll see if it holds if people ruin it for us.
They're not ruining it. It's a long way to go to ruin Jerome Ford.
Well, yeah.
Jerome Ford has like 50 spots of ADP, and we know that those 50 spots can go like this. If you're at pick 170, getting to pick 120 is nothing, right? Just look at Pacheco went from 170 to 70 in like a week last year. So it can go like that. But for now, enjoy the Jerome Ford. And could you just confirm whether or not our Lions can win the championship?
Win the championship?
Probably win the NFL championship. Hoist the Lombardi Trophy.
Just win it. Yeah, probably not that far, but they're going to win, hopefully, some fantasy championships for people.
They are, right?
That's what we hope. Definitely.
Because they're going against the Bears' defense, and the Bears' offense is better than their defense. Vikings' offense is better than their defense.
We love it, man. I mean, everything. I think the number one value right now in early drafts that I've done is both of the running backs, particularly DeAndre Swift, especially if you draft wide receiver heavy. He's exactly what you look for when you under like that style of drafting. Like
precisely. I love David Montgomery too.
Yeah. One of the easiest picks, I think, for upside, because while DeAndre Swift's ADP has moved there for a reason, the team has basically hinted that they don't want to give him all these carries. There's still a path where the situation forces it, right? Like their hand is dictated. There's still an outcome where that happens. Plus, this is a guy that's already been really good on a committee workload anyways, right? Like DeAndre Swift has scored a touchdown in 55% of his career games. Only 2 other running backs have scored a touchdown at a higher rate than him. So he's already been good. And just what if David Montgomery gets hurt? What if some things happen? Like there's still a path where DeAndre Swift catches like 70 passes this year. There's a lot there. And especially now that he's not, going in the 3rd round, right? Like that's the archetype of guy you want to avoid when he goes, and like where he was at the 1-2 turn last year. But when he's a 6th, 7th round pick and you've already gone wide receiver heavy, he's the exact kind of guy you look for in that structure, because you want big upside players like Ramondre Stevenson was last year if the things shake out. Like it's one of the easiest structural drafting approaches. Easily, if you're going wide receiver heavy, you just knock down DeAndre Swift at that point. And even David Montgomery you can do afterwards.
Oh, yeah, David Montgomery, man. He can score 15 touchdowns too.
Yeah, I do expect the Lions to reverse the rushing touchdowns to a degree. Like, I don't think they're going to have 23 rushing touchdowns again.
Ramondre Stevenson's ADP, do you know what it is?
Too high.
In comparison?
To Swift's?
Just FFPC.
Yeah, so Ramondre's
this is tight
like
end premium. Tight end premium.
He's a 3rd and 4th rounder, right?
He's the 30th pick.
Yeah, that's too rich.
30th pick. 33 at the FFPC. 30 on Underdog. What?
And honestly, he's the teams in FFPC, especially because they're good for this, not to take any shots at people that play over FFC, but I'm going to. I guarantee you all the people that take Ramondre have probably already taken 2 running backs too. They're probably going running back, Ramondre.
The FFPC, they like running backs.
They really do love. I think it's
because it's a flex position that they have there. It's 2-2 and then flexes.
2 flexes,
opposed to 2-2-3. I think that's the reason why. Because you only start 2 actual wide receivers, but in full PPR, those flex positions tend to be optimized around wide receivers, so that's the direction to go. I will get you out of here. We've been at it 3 hours, my friend. It's been incredible. What a ride.
Always
give me a truther. Give me a guy to stash in Dynasty that I can't be given up on. We already talked about Jerome Ford. We've talked about a bunch of guys already. Give me one more.
Oh shit, man! I don't know. I always suck at having these guys like these angels in the outfield.
You know, I got Ashton Doolin. Okay.
Oh yeah, you do love
I
Doolin.
got Jerome Ford. Okay.
Well, I don't know if Jerome Ford. I guess he counts as truther status. Khalil
you
Shakir.
go another Brown. You could go with Anthony Schwartz.
Oh no, he's definitely no one's truthing.
He
for
would
that
qualify
anymore.
as a truther. You'd have to be Joshua Kelly is interesting.
Yeah, I would say Khalil Shakir is maybe the one guy that kind of stands out.
Yeah, he's basically the wide receiver version of Jerome Ford.
He still has a pathway to be the slot receiver there, even if they add the receivers. I don't know who all these.
Why do you like
suck.
Shakir? Talk about Shakir.
I just liked him a lot coming out of college. You know, he's just the guy that can win on the interior very well. He was actually kind of productive when they gave him an opportunity last year, but didn't really get on the field a lot, which is probably a red flag given the season the Bills had. I don't know. I was just giving you a name. I don't know.
Oh, we got a report coming in from Cody Carpentier. Can you guess who's visiting with Jahmyr Gibbs? Guess which team is visiting with Jahmyr Gibbs?
Probably either the Cowboys or like the Buccaneers or something, right?
Yes,
like
the Buccaneers.
Talked about.
You got it.
A team. I'll tell you what.
Oh my God, the stone worst possible thing they could do.
Of
course, the NFL.
Jahmyr Gibbs visiting. Jahmyr Gibbs visiting was always going to be the team that has no business taking him.
Oh God. Oh, puke. Bye, everybody. Hey, you like that video? Be sure to subscribe and activate those alerts so you get notified as soon as new videos drop. And be sure to check out playerprofiler.com. We have all the tools for you to dominate every type of fantasy league. We have a draft kit, Dynasty Deluxe, data analysis, DFS Dominator, and don't forget the player rankings to rule them all.